Imagine if I shared with you that humanity's most extraordinary object has been absent for more than 2,500 years. The Ark of the Covenant, the earthly seat of the divine, didn't simply vanish into thin air. Someone concealed it, deliberately, and the hints pointing to where it rests might be woven throughout biblical scripture itself. Over the coming hour, we're going to reveal every possible detail concerning this fabled relic, starting from its heaven-inspired creation all the way to its puzzling disappearance, and we'll examine the startling possibilities about its current whereabouts. But first, for those who are just discovering this channel, think about tapping that like button and subscribing if you haven't done so yet. Your engagement allows us to keep producing additional content that helps you discover something fascinating. Also, share with us your location and the current time where you are. We're creating a worldwide community right here. So now, shall we explore today's narrative, the missing seat of the Almighty? Hidden within Ethiopia's mountainous terrain, a centuries-old church protects what could be humanity's most valuable treasure. The religious guardians speak quietly about a chest made of gold that supposedly once contained the very words of God. They insist it sits behind stone barriers that haven't been disturbed for millennia. Yet they might be mistaken or dishonest, or safeguarding humanity's most holy mystery. This is the account of the Ark of the Covenant, a container fashioned from gold and timber that disappeared from Jerusalem more than 2 millennia in the past. Some claim it contains stone tablets engraved by divine touch. Others are convinced it possesses abilities capable of destroying entire civilizations or bringing the deceased back to life. Monarchs have perished while hunting for it. Military forces have traveled across entire continents, pursuing whispers about where it might be. Adventurers and academics, religious leaders and fortune seekers, all captivated by the same seemingly unanswerable riddle. Where does God's throne currently rest? The final confirmed sighting occurred when Solomon's magnificent temple shone brilliantly in Jerusalem's sunlight. The ark remained in total darkness, beyond a curtain so dense that illumination could scarcely pass through. A single individual had permission to come near, and that happened just annually. The chief priest would step forward with trembling steps, small bells attached to his garments so observers could verify he remained alive. Should those bells cease their ringing, they'd retrieve his remains using cords fastened to his feet. Then the Babylonian army arrived. Flames devoured the temple entirely. Smoke billowed from the sacred city for multiple days. After the embers cooled, the ark had vanished. No documentation mentions its seizure, no testimony recounts its obliteration. It just evaporated as though it never had physical existence whatsoever. However, the legends persisted through time. Knights from the medieval period insisted they discovered it underneath Solomon's horse stables. Ethiopian rulers proclaimed it as the foundation of their heaven-granted authority to govern. German expeditions from the Nazi era combed through arid regions, believing that possessing the Ark meant possessing global dominance. The film industry transformed it into the quintessential plot device, a container so hazardous that simply peering inside could dissolve tissue from skeletal structure. Still, somewhere between legendary tales and documented events exists reality. The Ark had genuine existence. It was physically real. Scripture portrays it with precise specifications. Every dimension, every substance, every golden angelic figure that decorated its cover. Throughout centuries, it functioned as the vital center of an entire society. It guided military forces during conflicts. It brought sudden death to those who made contact without authorization. It embodied divine presence made tangible through timber and precious metal. The quest persists in modern times. Space-based imaging technology surveys isolated valleys. Underground detection equipment examines ancient structural remains. Groups of scientists examine debris in abandoned caverns. Every venture produces fresh hypotheses, renewed optimism, fresh letdown. The Ark stays as unreachable as vapor, as concealed as darkness itself. Some are convinced it waits within a cavern on Mount Nebo's slopes, secured there by the prophet Jeremiah prior to Jerusalem's conquest. Others reference passages underneath the Temple Mount, where medieval warrior monks might have concealed their most prized discovery. Ethiopian heritage maintains it remains in Axum, protected by a solitary monk who'll never reveal its mysteries. Alternative proposals suggest locations spanning from Ireland all the way to Japan, from Oak Island to the Grand Canyon's depths. The reality might prove less complicated and more meaningful than any treasure expedition. Maybe the Ark's true significance never resided in its material composition, but rather in its symbolic meaning, humanity's yearning to reach toward the divine, to grasp the boundless within bounded reality. Every civilization has constructed similar artifacts. Every faith tradition has fashioned containers meant for sacred purposes, yet none have seized collective imagination quite like this golden container that once preserved God's commandments. This evening, we travel backward to the origin point, to a mountain wrapped in atmospheric phenomena and flames, to an individual who communicated with the divine directly, to that instant when the heavens contacted our world and provided blueprints for constructing a seat worthy of the Supreme Being. The Ark's narrative belongs to all of us, a chronicle involving belief and authority, disappearance and desire, the perpetual human endeavor to connect mortality with eternity. Close your eyes briefly and allow the desert winds to transport you backward 3,500 years. Sand radiates heat underneath your soles. The sun blazes white across an unending horizon. And somewhere distant, rumbling sounds emerge from a mountain where no weather formations appear. Something remarkable is on the verge of creation, the design of authority. The mountain shakes violently, not from seismic activity or landslide, but from something's presence that surpasses human comprehension. Mount Sinai blazes with flames that destroy nothing. Enclosed by clouds concealing its summit from human vision, electrical discharges split the atmosphere every several pulse beats. Rumbling reverberations shake the actual stones themselves. And upon the peak, an individual called Moses stands directly before the universe's creator. Those 40 days seem like 40 entire years. Moses consumes neither food nor water, sustained by divine proximity exclusively. His flesh becomes radiant, so intensely bright that subsequently his community will request he shield his face with fabric. But presently, within this interval existing beyond normal time, he absorbs instructions destined to transform human chronicles. The voice communicates regarding numerous matters: regulations to direct a population still discovering how to exist in freedom, ceremonial practices to preserve sanctity within an impure reality, instructions for religious officials and celebrations, for fairness and compassion. Then arrives something distinctly different, something causing Moses to draw nearer, his pulse accelerating with excitement. "Instruct them to construct for me a holy place," the voice declares, "gentle as warm rainfall, awesome as harsh winter tempest. I shall reside in their midst." Those words reverberate within Moses's consciousness. The God responsible for creating cosmic structures and microscopic particles, who infuses existence into Earth and identifies celestial bodies individually, desires to inhabit space among a community of former enslaved people traveling through barren lands, not merely to observe or supervise, but to reside, to establish his dwelling alongside humanity. The directives stream forth like harmonious sound. Every specification holds importance. Every measurement conveys significance. The holy structure shall be transportable, created for people constantly moving, fabric panels and supporting beams, bronze and silver materials, premium cloth colored in purple and deep red. Yet at its core will rest something unique, something without historical precedent. "Construct an ark using acacia timber," the voice proceeds. Moses commits every phrase to memory. 2½ cubits in length, 1½ cubits across, 1½ cubits in height, approximately 4 feet long by 2 feet wide by 2 feet tall, sufficiently large to contain stone tablets, sufficiently compact for individuals to transport. The timber requires covering with pure gold, internally and externally. A decorative gold border surrounding its edge, gold rings positioned at its 4 corner points, carrying rods made from acacia timber wrapped in gold, never to be extracted. The ark must never make direct contact with human flesh. Rising above the container, the voice portrays something even more spectacular. A covering piece made from pure gold, matching the ark's length and width dimensions. 2 cherubim, formed by hammering from identical gold material, their wings extending across the covering, their countenances directed toward one another in perpetual observation. "At that location I shall encounter you," the voice assures. "From atop the covering piece, positioned between both cherubim, I shall communicate with you concerning everything I direct for Israel's population." Moses grasps the meaning instantly. This will transcend any common container or storage box. The ark shall function as heaven's outpost on our planet, the location where unlimited and limited dimensions converge, the space where divine communication will reach human hearing. Yet the voice hasn't concluded. The ark will preserve 3 holy items, stone tablets inscribed by God's own touch, bearing the 10 fundamental laws that will direct this emerging nation. A golden container of manna, the sustenance from above that nourished them throughout wilderness travels. Aaron's staff that sprouted, demonstration of divine selection when human governance faced questioning. Each object communicates portion of the account. The tablets represent law and agreement, the binding contract between God and his selected community. The manna remembers supernatural provision during impossible situations, daily sustenance descending from barren atmosphere. The staff exhibits authority over the natural world itself, lifeless timber brought to immediate blooming existence. Combined, they convert the ark from mere furnishing into divine disclosure. This golden container will hold the fundamental essence of Israel's connection with the divine, law, sustenance, and authority, everything required to maintain a nation created in desolate regions and intended for a land of promise. The specifications become increasingly detailed. The support poles must stay within the rings perpetually, prepared for instant movement. Whenever the ark relocates, it receives initial covering with a partition, followed by blue fabric, then with marine animal hides, then with additional pure blue material. Multiple protective layers, concealing its brilliance from inquisitive observation. Moses pays attention as the voice outlines who may draw near, and the timing, exclusively the chief priest, exclusively annually, exclusively following particular cleansing ceremonies. Blood receives sprinkling upon the covering piece. Fragrant smoke will fill the atmosphere. The bells attached to the priest's garment will indicate whether he survives or expires within absolute holiness's presence. The consequences for disobedience arrive swiftly and conclusively. The consecrated cannot receive common treatment. The holy requires proper respect. Authority this concentrated demands cautious management, like electrical energy trapped within a vessel or solar radiance enclosed in fabric. As those 40 days approach completion, Moses grasps 2 stone tablets within his hands. Their weight astonishes him, not their actual physical mass, but the spiritual significance of their representation. These stones bear God's voice, transformed into marks and characters that human vision can interpret. However, even while he readies himself to journey down the mountain, Moses recognizes that the tablets independently prove insufficient. They require a dwelling worthy of their source. They require the Ark of the Covenant, the golden seat where the heavens will contact our world and communicate words of intensity into human consciousness. The design burns within his recollection. Every specification stays perfectly clear. Shortly, very shortly, skilled workers will convert divine vision into earthly actuality. God's throne will assume physical form through human effort, directed by celestial understanding, and nothing throughout the ancient civilizations will ever remain completely unchanged. The skilled artisan and the sacred agreement. Throughout the wilderness encampment, information circulates like rapidly spreading wildfire. The population assembles surrounding Moses as he reveals the divine design, their expressions displaying amazement and fear. They've witnessed extraordinary events previously, the sea separated, water emerging from stone formations, sustenance from the atmosphere. Yet this seems distinctly different, more personal, more hazardous. God intends to inhabit their community. Moses requests voluntary contributions, not exclusively gold and silver materials, though substantial quantities will prove necessary. Blue and purple and deep red thread, premium linen and goat fiber, ram hides colored crimson, and hide from ocean creatures, acacia, timber, and olive extract, aromatic substances, and valuable gemstones. The community's reaction overwhelms him completely. Individuals bring family treasures. Women contribute adornments transmitted through multiple generations. Men present implements and resources saved for uncertain coming times. The accumulated pile expands until Moses must request they cease giving. Hearts pour forth with abundant generosity. Previous enslaved people possessing nothing now contribute everything for this consecrated undertaking. Their passionate response frightens him somewhat. Do they comprehend what they're constructing? Do they understand the enormity of inviting the divine to inhabit their midst? However, God has previously selected his craftsman. Bezalel from Judah's tribal group advances forward, youthful yet possessing skills surpassing his age. His hands have molded timber and metal since early childhood. His vision perceives designs and balances that others overlook. More significantly, Moses detects something deeper within him, a spiritual awareness that will prove essential for this consecrated labor. Standing alongside Bezalel appears Oholiab from Dan's tribal group. Where Bezalel demonstrates excellence in metalworking and building construction, Oholiab excels at textile work and decorative stitching. United, they create an ideal collaboration. The divine voice has infused both of them with supernatural ability, understanding beyond anything they absorbed from human instructors. The work areas emerge surrounding the tabernacle location. Flames burn continuously day and night, heating gold until it flows like liquid honey. Hammers strike against metalworking surfaces as valuable metals assume fresh configurations. The aroma of burning acacia timber combines with incense and coloring agents. Women operate weaving equipment, producing fabrics possessing extraordinary beauty and exactness. Bezalel commences with the ark container itself. He chooses the highest quality acacia timber, sections containing no imperfection or structural weakness. His hands move with assurance as he shapes and connects, producing a container precisely 2 1/2 cubits long, 1 1/2 cubits across, 1 1/2 cubits tall. The measurements hold significance. Every dimension bears meaning within the divine calculations. The timber alone would possess beauty, yet it represents merely the foundation. Layer upon layer, Bezalel applies sheets of pure gold material. Initially, the interior section, hammered thin and installed with flawlessness. Subsequently, the exterior surface, until no timber remains visible. The container radiates like captured solar brilliance, so intensely bright that direct viewing causes discomfort. The decorative border follows next, a gold molding surrounding the upper edge, not simple ornamentation, but a declaration of royal status. This container will preserve the law belonging to the king above all kings. It merits a crown befitting its contents. Bezalel's hands form the gold with deep respect, understanding that angelic beings might observe his craftsmanship. 4 gold rings attached to the corner positions. Each one must achieve perfection, sufficiently strong to support the ark's mass through innumerable journeys. Through these rings shall pass the transport poles, acacia timber wrapped with gold, never to be withdrawn. The ark must never make contact with human skin directly. Even consecrated objects can prove hazardous in unholy possession. The covering piece presents the greatest challenge. Pure gold formed by hammering from a solitary piece, 2½ cubits long, 1½ cubits across. However, the cherubim test every capability Bezalel possesses. 2 winged entities hammered from identical gold as the covering, positioned facing one another with wings spread broadly. No living person has observed a cherub. These aren't the chubby infants from subsequent artistic representations, but fierce protectors of divine sanctity. Bezalel labors from visionary inspiration, his hands directed by comprehension surpassing human understanding. The facial features emerge from shapeless gold material, noble, fearsome, magnificent. Wings curve overhead, establishing a shelter of protection and reverence. The space positioned between the cherubim will stay vacant. No carved figure or representation will indicate God's presence there. The divine requires no physical manifestation, no likeness carved by human effort. The vacant space communicates more powerfully than any craftwork, enigma beyond depiction, sanctity beyond human conception. While Bezalel labors, crowds assemble to observe. They preserve respectful separation, perceiving something consecrated within the process. Young ones murmur inquiries to their guardians. Community elders express approval at each finished specification. The ark assumes physical form before their observation, yet also something additional, their identity as a community selected by the heavens. Oholiab supervises the protective coverings, blue fabric possessing finest construction, purple and deep red threads crafted into designs of remarkable complexity. When the ark travels, these textiles will conceal its brilliance from undeserving observation. Multiple protective layers, beautiful inherently, yet secondary to what it shields. The labor proceeds for multiple weeks. Additional craftsmen ready the tabernacle structure itself, the transportable sanctuary destined to accommodate the ark, golden illumination stands and bronze ceremonial platforms, curtains decorated with cherubim embroidery, a partition to divide the most holy section from the merely consecrated. Everything must achieve perfection. God merits nothing inferior. Eventually, the significant moment occurs. The ark stands finished, radiating within the wilderness sunlight. Bezalel and Oholiab retreat backward, depleted yet satisfied. They have produced something unprecedented, a seat for the invisible monarch, a dwelling location for divine presence. Moses draws near with the stone tablets within his grasp, God's law inscribed by God's personal touch, still retaining the memory of Sinai's flames. With great care, reverently, he positions them within the ark. The golden container of manna follows afterward. Aaron's sprouted staff will arrive subsequently, yet presently, law and provision rest united within their golden dwelling. The covering piece settles into position with a sound resembling gentle wind. The cherubim extend their wings across the consecrated contents. The Ark of the Covenant stands prepared to accomplish its purpose as the intersection point between the heavens and our world. Yet even while Moses steps backward, he understands that the genuine test awaits ahead. The Ark possesses beauty, perfection, holiness. Now, it must demonstrate its authority. Shortly, it will guide a nation through desolate lands and military conflicts, through death, through victories and hardships. God's golden seat is preparing to transform the world. Flames, atmospheric phenomena, and the journey commences. The significant instant has arrived. Throughout multiple months, the ark has remained within the freshly finished tabernacle, concealed beneath layers of blue fabric and consecrated partitions. The population has grown familiar with its proximity, the burden of sanctity pressing upon their encampment like summer warmth preceding a tempest. Yet this day, everything transforms. Moses draws near the most holy section with shaking hands. The chief priest's garments seem weightier than typical. Each golden bell attached to his lower edge serves as mortality's reminder within the Eternal's presence. Beyond the partition waits the ark, silent and radiant. The cherubim's wings project shadows within the lamplight. As his feet traverse the boundary, reality shifts. Illumination blazes from the covering piece, not the yellow radiance of flames or the white brilliance of solar light, but something completely distinctive. God's magnificence rendered visible, compressed into brightness that should blind him, yet somehow doesn't. The light communicates without verbal expression, transmits without linguistic structure. The voice emanates from between the cherubim, precisely as guaranteed on Mount Sinai. Inform the population to ready themselves for travel. We depart at sunrise. Moses retreats backward, his skin luminous with reflected magnificence. The bells upon his garment sound softly as he emerges from the consecrated space. Nobody inquires what he perceived. His countenance communicates everything they require understanding. The wandering is preparing to commence. Throughout that night, rest proves difficult for the encampment. Young ones ask their guardians regarding their destination. Adults contemplate whether they're prepared for whatever awaits ahead. The ark has existed as their neighbor for months, a source of satisfaction and reassurance. Now it will transform into their navigator into unfamiliar territories, their defender against invisible hazards. Sunrise arrives with supernatural exactness. As the initial solar ray contacts the tabernacle's summit, a cloud formation commences developing. Not the natural cumulus belonging to morning atmosphere, but a column of moisture that ascends from the most holy section itself. Compact and white, it ascends toward the heavens like a beacon constructed from mist. The Levites comprehend their responsibilities. Months of readiness have rendered every action exact. They draw near the tabernacle with cautious footsteps, their hands shaking with respect and anxiety. The ark requires covering prior to travel. No common vision can observe its magnificence during the march. Initially comes the partition that typically divides the most holy section from the exterior sanctuary. Dense fabric decorated with cherubim stitching, sufficiently heavy to obstruct all illumination. They position it across the ark with unlimited caution, as though guaranteeing that every portion of gold stays concealed from view. Subsequently, the covering made of blue fabric. Then, marine creature hides, durable hide that will shield against wind and precipitation. Ultimately, additional cloth of pure blue distributed throughout. The ark vanishes beneath fabric layers, converted from radiant throne to enigmatic load. The transport poles slide through their golden rings. 4 Levites from Kohath's family assume their stations, 2 at each extremity. They are youthful men, selected for physical strength and dedication. Their existences now rely upon flawless compliance. One careless footstep, one instant of disrespect, could signify immediate death. While they elevate, the cloud formation overhead commences relocating gradually. Initially, a gentle drift toward the eastern direction. Subsequently, with increased intention, as though attracted by an invisible force toward destinations comprehended exclusively by the heavens. The indication proves unmistakable. The journey has commenced. Moses issues the directive. Ascend, Lord. Allow your adversaries to scatter. Allow all who despise you to escape before your presence. His voice projects across the encampment, powerful and assured. Trumpets respond from every direction. The monumental migration proceeds. The ark guides them entirely. Behind its concealed magnificence, 600,000 individuals collect their possessions and organize into arrangement. Families load pack animals and camels. The aged individuals depend on walking supports. Young ones move between the cargo animals, stimulated by the expedition ahead. Yet, this transcends any common journey. The cloud overhead defies every natural principle. It relocates against wind currents, alters direction without warning, ascends higher or descends lower, according to divine intention. When they should pause, it continues relocating. When they should accelerate, it halts completely in vacant desert. The initial day passes without occurrence. The ark carriers preserve their consistent rhythm, their vision concentrated on the route ahead. The cloud navigates them through valleys and across elevated terrain, pursuing paths that no chart has ever documented. Behind them, history's greatest migration flows across the terrain. Unusual occurrences commence happening almost instantly. Water materializes in locations where no natural source should exist. The solar warmth diminishes when the cloud passes overhead. Serpents and venomous creatures escape from their route as though driven by invisible forces. The actual terrain itself appears to yield before the ark's authority. During evening hours, the cloud formation ceases above a surface of crimson sand. The Levites descend the ark with great care, their limbs aching from the day's exertion. The tabernacle ascends, surrounding it with practiced effectiveness. Fabric panels and supporting beams, bronze and gold materials, all discovering their appropriate positions within the diminishing illumination. Yet, as darkness descends, something remarkable takes place. The cloud formation commences, radiating. Gentle initially, like lunar light filtered through mist, subsequently brighter until it blazes like a column of flame extending toward the celestial bodies. The complete encampment bathes within its radiance. No illumination source or lamp proves necessary. God's presence supplies all the illumination they require. The flames burn without destroying. It provides comfort without thermal energy, reassurance without rational explanation. Young ones drift into sleep, observing its gentle movement. Adults remain in amazement, recalling accounts their ancestors shared about burning vegetation and divine encounters. Throughout the darkness, the flame column maintains vigilance. No untamed creature draws near the encampment. No adversary attempts to launch assault. The ark rests securely within its shelter, enclosed by the visible manifestation of the Supreme Being. For the initial time since departing Egypt, the population sleeps peacefully within the wilderness. Morning arrives with the cloud's transformation to its daytime manifestation. White and enigmatic, it hovers overhead the tabernacle like a standard of divine protection. The population awakens, discovering their reality transformed once more. They no longer exist as displaced persons or travelers. They have transformed into the Lord's military force, guided by heaven's personal battle emblem. The journey will persist for 40 years throughout desert and mountainous terrain, across waterways and surrounding hostile populations. The ark will navigate them through successes and failures, through intervals of belief and periods of defiance. Some, commencing this journey, will perish within the wilderness. Others will survive to observe the land of promise. Yet this day, within this instant of commencement, everything appears achievable. The God who divided the sea and brought down sustenance will serve as their navigator and protector. The Ark of the Covenant will transport them homeward, one extraordinary footstep at a time. The barriers crumble. Jericho. 40 years have elapsed like a vision. The generation possessing slavery knowledge in Egypt has expired within the wilderness, succeeded by their offspring, who comprehend exclusively freedom and the Ark's presence. Moses has blessed them one concluding time and vanished into the mountains to expire alone with God. Presently, Joshua occupies where his instructor previously stood, experiencing the burden of guidance and divine purpose. The Jordan waterway obstructs their route to the land of promise. Spring flooding has converted it into a violent current, impossible to traverse by conventional methods, yet the ark has never existed bound by conventional methods. Joshua summons the priests, transporting the consecrated container to draw near the water's boundary. Their feet contact the muddy shore. The waterway proceeds its rush toward the Dead Sea, displaying no indication of supernatural involvement. Footstep by footstep, they advance deeper. Water circulates surrounding their lower legs, subsequently their knee joints. Belief confronts anxiety with every advancing motion. Subsequently, the impossible takes place. The water ceases its movement. Further upstream, the Jordan accumulates as though it encountered an invisible barrier. Further downstream, the waterbed drains until exclusively mud and stones persist. Between the two water barriers, a passage materializes. Arid terrain, where instants previously aquatic life swam and currents surged. The priests transporting the ark proceed to the center of the vacant riverbed and cease movement. Behind them, 600,000 individuals traverse on arid ground. Families and livestock, military personnel and young ones, all passing between water barriers, restrained by divine authority. The ark waits with patience until every final individual reaches the opposite side. Only subsequently do the priests relocate forward. As their feet contact the western shore, the Jordan surges back to existence. Water crashes downward from upstream, occupies the vacant channel, continues its ancient journey to the sea. The crossing achieves completion. Following 4 decades of traveling, they have penetrated the land of promise. Yet, the land lacks vacancy. Urban centers mark the terrain, each one a stronghold constructed to endure for centuries. The initial and most significant of these is Jericho. Ancient surpassing recollection, prosperous surpassing conception, defended by barriers that have never collapsed to human assault. Jericho's barriers ascend 40 feet into the desert atmosphere. The exterior barrier stands 6 feet in density, beyond it 15 feet of vacant space. Subsequently, the interior barrier, 12 feet in density and even more elevated than the initial. Residential structures are constructed into the space between, establishing a dual obstacle that has defended the urban center since legendary times. Jericho's population observes from their barriers as Israel's military force draws near. They have perceived the accounts, Egypt's afflictions, the sea's division, the water from stone formations, and sustenance from the atmosphere. Anxiety settles heavily within their consciousness, yet they place confidence in stone and construction materials, in elevation and density, in the fundamental reality that Jericho has never collapsed. Joshua examines the fortress urban center and obtains his directives straight from the heavens. No siege machinery, no ascending implements, no underground passages or door-breaking instruments. The military strategy defies every fundamental principle of ancient combat. It resembles insanity. It might prove the most ingenious approach ever developed. The march commences at sunrise on the initial day. 7 priests transport 7 trumpets fashioned from ram's horns. Behind them, the Ark of the Covenant relocates in its magnificence, transported by the faithful Levites. Israel's armed individuals follow, their armaments radiating within the morning solar light. They encircle the urban center, once in absolute silence. Exclusively, their footfalls indicate their passage. Thousands of sandaled feet elevating dust clouds from the ancient route. The ram's horns stay soundless. No battle cry reverberates from their formations. Even the young ones observe without vocalizing. The defenders upon the barriers grow anxious. They had anticipated siege equipment and assault slopes. This soundless procession seems more threatening than any traditional assault. Something supernatural walks among the adversary formations. The golden container radiates like trapped solar brilliance. Divine authority emanates from its manifestation. The circuit achieves completion. The Israelites return to their encampment. No clarification follows. No requirements for capitulation. They simply march away, departing Jericho's defenders to contemplate what the following day will deliver. Day 2 delivers the identical ceremony, the soundless march, the radiating ark, the anxious observers upon the barrier. Day 3 pursues the identical design. By day 4, the pattern has transformed almost ordinary. The sentries on Jericho's barriers grow inattentive. Whatever the Israelites are strategizing, it appears harmless, sufficiently. Yet on day 7, everything transforms. The procession commences prior to sunrise, earlier than typical. 7 times they encircle the urban center. Each circuit constructs pressure like a bowstring, gradually drawn tense. The ark navigates them around and around, its manifestation growing more overwhelming with each revolution. On the 7th circuit, Joshua elevates his voice for the initial time in a week. Proclaim loudly, "For the Lord has delivered you, the urban center." The phrases reverberate across the surface like rumbling from a cloudless atmosphere. The response proves immediate and tremendous. 600,000 voices ascend in a battle proclamation that trembles the very atmosphere. The ram's horns produce their sound of triumph. The sound constructs and constructs until it appears to emanate from the earth itself, from the atmosphere overhead, from the stones underneath their feet. Jericho's barriers shake violently. Ancient foundations positioned when the world existed as youthful commence to fracture. Construction material disintegrates. Enormous stones relocate within their positions. The impossible is occurring before 1,000 horrified observations. With a sound resembling breaking mountains, the barriers collapse. 40 feet of stone and brick cascade inward, destroying residential structures and occupying streets with debris. The exterior barrier descends toward the urban center. The interior barrier tumbles following it. Within seconds, centuries of cautious construction transform into accumulations of broken stone. Exclusively one section persists standing, a small portion where a crimson cord suspends from an opening. Rahab, the accommodation keeper, had concealed Joshua's intelligence gatherers and secured salvation for her family unit. Her barrier section stands solid, while everything surrounding it disintegrates to powder. The Israelite military personnel charge through the openings where entrances previously stood. The conflict proves brief and fearsome. Jericho's defenders, astonished by the supernatural collapse, present minimal opposition. By sunset, the ancient urban center exists in devastation, its valuables dedicated to the Lord, who brought downward its barriers. Exclusively the ark comprehends the mystery. Exclusively the golden container grasps the mechanics of divine involvement. It has transported God's presence surrounding Jericho's barriers, and that presence has trembled the very foundations of the earth. What human power could never accomplish, belief has achieved within 7 days. The triumph at Jericho reverberates across Canaan. Every fortified urban center trembles at the information. The Israelites march from success to success, yet they recall which armament secured their greatest triumph. Not blade or spear, not strategy or bravery, but the Ark of the Covenant, transporting heaven's authority into conflict. The barriers that stood for centuries collapsed within instants. The stronghold that never capitulated transformed into debris within the duration of a proclamation. And at the center of everything, God's golden throne relocated onward, prepared for whatever conflicts awaited ahead, a divine force of combat. Canaan's conquest progresses like wildfire across the terrain. Urban center following urban center collapses before Israel's military advance. And at the foundation of every triumph stands the Ark of the Covenant. What commenced at Jericho transforms into a design repeated throughout the land of promise. The golden container has transformed beyond a consecrated artifact. It exists as an armament of divine combat. At Ai, excessive confidence produces initial failure. Joshua's individuals retreat in fear. 36 military personnel deceased on the battlefield. The encampment grieves throughout the darkness until Joshua uncovers the explanation. Achan has acquired valuables from Jericho, violating the consecrated prohibition. Once fairness is administered and the transgression eliminated, the ark navigates them backward to Ai. This occasion, triumph arrives rapidly and thoroughly. The Gibeonites perceive the accounts and select trickery instead of obliteration. They dress as journeyers from remote territories, their bread moldy, their beverage containers fractured and aged. "We have perceived of your God and his extraordinary actions," they communicate to Joshua. Establish a treaty with us. The deception functions until excessively delayed. By the occasion Israel uncovers the reality, they exist bound by pledge to defend the Gibeonites from their adversaries. Those adversaries prove not prolonged in arriving. 5 Amorite monarchs combine against Gibeon, their military forces encircling the urban center like ravenous predators. The Gibeonites dispatch urgent messengers to Joshua. Arrive rapidly, rescue your servants. All the Amorite monarchs have united forces against us. Joshua marches throughout the darkness, the ark journeying ahead of his most rapid soldiers. Sunrise discovers them in station above the adversary encampment. The assault arrives without warning. Israel's military personnel pouring downward the hillside like an avalanche of bronze and iron materials. Yet this conflict will receive remembrance for something far more remarkable than military strategies. As the Amorites escape in fear, Joshua experiences divine motivation burning within his chest. The adversary is departing. Darkness will provide them protection. The triumph will prove incomplete unless the heavens themselves involve. He elevates his voice to the atmosphere, vocalizing phrases that will reverberate throughout chronicles. Solar bodies stand motionless above Gibeon. Lunar bodies cease above Aijalon's valley. The cosmic arrangement pauses. The solar body freezes within the center of the atmosphere, like a golden disk suspended within blue fabric. The lunar body suspends motionless above the valley. For a complete day, 24 hours, the celestial entities comply with a human voice, vocalizing with divine permission. Day prolongs into impossibility. History's most extended day permits the most thorough triumph Israel has ever secured. Hailstones descend from the cloudless atmosphere, each one sufficiently large to destroy a man's cranium. More Amorites expire from heaven's ice than from Israel's blades. The 5 monarchs conceal within a cavern at Makkedah. Yet Joshua's soldiers discover them and extract them outward like captured creatures. Their urban centers burn, their military forces disperse. The Southern Alliance disintegrates within a solitary day that endured as prolonged as 2. Information circulates through Canaan like disease through a crowded urban center. The Israelites don't exclusively combat with human armaments. They direct the solar and lunar bodies. They summon downward hailstones from vacant atmospheres. Their golden container transports authorities that create absurdity of conventional combat. Hazor's monarch Jabin establishes the most extensive coalition yet observed. Monarchs from the northern mountains and coastal surfaces combine their military forces. Iron chariots, the ancient world's equivalent of contemporary armored vehicles, assemble in quantities surpassing calculation. Equine animals and riders occupy the valleys like insects during a plague season. Yet the ark has confronted Pharaoh's chariots at the Red Sea. Iron wheels and bronze spears possess no intimidation for the supreme being's throne. Joshua strikes without warning at Merom's waters. The adversary coalition, extensive as it exists, dissolves before Israel's advance, like snow before summer flames. The chariot's superiority proves meaningless upon broken terrain. Equine animals stumble within rocky landscape. Iron wheels capture upon roots and stones. Joshua damages the surviving equine animals and burns every chariot. These armaments of human arrogance transform into burial fires for their possessors. Urban center following urban center opens its entrances or observes them broken downward. The ark navigates Israel's military force through terrains painted crimson with blood. Displaced person columns escape toward remote boundaries. Complete populations abandon their ancestral dwellings rather than confront the fearsome golden container and the God who inhabits between its cherubim. Still, not every triumph arrives through violence. The simple manifestation of the ark frequently proves adequate to fragment adversary determination. Complete military forces escape at the observation of its radiating surface. Monarchs present tribute and capitulation rather than hazard divine anger. Israel's God's reputation circulates more rapidly than their military forces can march. Some urban centers select obliteration instead of capitulation. Their monarchs favor death to existence beneath foreign governance. The Ark displays no compassion to such resistance. Barriers disintegrate at its drawing near. Defenders experience fear at the sound of Hebrew battle proclamations. Ancient family lines terminate within solitary afternoons of destruction. The consecrated and the violent combine in methods that would disturb subsequent generations. The identical Ark, preserving the law against homicide, navigates military forces in campaigns of extermination. The compassion covering that presents forgiveness to the remorseful displays no compassion to the unremorseful. Divine affection and divine anger demonstrate to exist as two countenances of the identical cosmic force. Young ones mature within Israel, comprehending that their God combats for them. They absorb observing the Ark not exclusively as a consecrated artifact, but as their nation's most capable armament. Adversaries might possess superior quantities, enhanced armaments, more experienced military personnel, yet Israel possesses the Supreme Being's manifestation, marching at the forefront of their columns. The conquest requires 7 years to achieve completion. 7 years of perpetual combat, of urban centers burned and populations displaced. When the combating ultimately concludes, the land of promise exists beneath Israelite governance, from Dan within the northern region to Beersheba within the southern region. The Ark has navigated them to thorough triumph. Yet triumph transports its personal expenses. A generation of military personnel has absorbed associating God's manifestation with battlefield success. The golden container that previously preserved exclusively law and sustenance presently transports the burden of innumerable conflicts, the recollection of adversaries destroyed and urban centers obliterated. The God of tranquility has disclosed himself as a God of combat. The Ark rests presently within the tabernacle at Shiloh, its traveling days temporarily concluded, yet the population recalls its authority. They comprehend what extraordinary events it can perform, what triumphs it can guarantee. In years approaching, that comprehension will demonstrate both advantage and disadvantage. Authority, even divine authority, can prove a hazardous possession within human grasp. The expense of disrespect. The conquest achieves completion, yet tranquility delivers its personal hazards. Without adversaries to combat and urban centers to capture, Israel's population commences, forgetting the instructions absorbed within wilderness travels. The Ark remains within its tabernacle at Shiloh, visited by travelers and priests, yet no extended navigating military forces into conflict. Recognition produces a hazardous casualness toward the consecrated. Generations elapse. Young ones who never observed the Jordan ceasing its movement mature into adults who regard the Ark's manifestation as customary. The golden container transforms into portion of the terrain, a tourist destination for foreign observers, a source of national satisfaction, yet not daily respect. The accounts of Jericho's barriers and the solar body standing motionless resemble remote legends rather than recent chronicles. This spiritual deviation establishes the foundation for calamity. Throughout a celebration at Shiloh, the Ark receives positioning onto a fresh cart for movement backward to its resting location. The bovine animals pulling the cart exist as youthful and nervous. The pathway exists as rough with stones and depressions. As the procession winds through the elevated terrain, catastrophe strikes without warning. The cart contacts a particularly profound depression. The Ark lurches violently toward one direction, tilting perilously toward the wooden platform's boundary. Gold radiates within the solar illumination as the consecrated container commences sliding. Within instants, it will crash to the terrain, distributing its valuable contents across the dusty pathway. Uzzah proceeds beside the cart, sufficiently proximate to extend outward and assist. He exists as a virtuous individual, faithful and genuine, one of the Levites entrusted with the Ark's supervision. His reactions prove rapid, his motivations pure. Without contemplation, he extends outward to stabilize the golden container with his unprotected hand. The instant, his tissue contacts consecrated gold. Electrical discharge strikes from a cloudless atmosphere. Uzzah collapses to the terrain as though struck by an invisible force. His physical form convulses once and exists motionless. Vapor ascends from his garments. The aroma of scorched tissue combines with incense and summer vegetation. Silence descends across the procession like a substantial covering. The bovine animals cease relocating, detecting something fearsome within the atmosphere. Individuals who instants previously had existed, joking and vocalizing, presently stand immobilized with terror. The ark remains perfectly balanced upon its cart, radiating innocently within the afternoon solar illumination. David the monarch arrives within the hour, his countenance pale with distress and anger. He had directed this procession, selected these individuals, approved this transportation method. Presently, one of his most reliable servants exists deceased beside the pathway, struck downward for attempting to defend the very artifact he served. How can I deliver the ark to Jerusalem presently? David requires of the atmosphere. If this represents what occurs to faithful individuals who serve with pure consciousness, what expectation do any of us possess? His voice fractures with sentiment. The vision of delivering God's throne to his capital urban center disintegrates within the powder beside Uzzah's cooling physical form. The monarch's anger burns intensely yet brief. As the initial distress diminishes, comprehension commences emerging. The law existed clear from commencement. The ark must never receive contact by human hands. Support poles through golden rings, transported on Levite shoulders, never on carts, never by bovine animals, never contacted directly, regardless how pure the motivation. Uzzah forgot the law within his desire to assist. His virtuous motivations could not overcome divine directives inscribed in stone and secured with blood. The consecrated functions by distinctive regulations than the simply ethical. What appears reasonable to human consciousness might exist as repugnance to divine sanctity. Anxiety circulates through Israel like wildfire. If Uzzah, faithful, dedicated Uzzah, could expire for such a simple error, what security could any of them assert? The God who had appeared like a defensive father throughout the conquest discloses himself as a destroying flame that burns even those who cherish him. David summons off the procession to Jerusalem. The ark cannot proceed its journey until they comprehend what transpired incorrectly and how to prevent future calamity. Yet where can it remain? Who will attempt housing such hazardous sanctity within their dwelling? Obed-Edom the Gittite advances forward, a foreigner by origin, yet an Israelite by selection. He presents his dwelling as temporary protection for the consecrated container. His family unit trembles at the proposition. His adjacent residents believe he has forfeited his rationality. Yet Obed-Edom has wrestled with the implications of Uzzah's death and reached distinctive conclusions. The ark isn't malevolent, he communicates to his frightened family unit. It exists as holy. A distinction exists. Malevolence pursues, harming the innocent. Sanctity requires respect from everyone. If we regard it with appropriate reverence, it will deliver advantage, not disadvantage. The ark arrives at Obed-Edom's dwelling, transported on Levite shoulders, according to ancient guidelines. No cart this occasion, no abbreviated methods or human innovations. The golden container penetrates his courtyard like visiting nobility, magnificent and fearsome, and completely surpassing common human experience. 3 months elapse. Gradually, cautiously, Obed-Edom's family unit absorbs existing with absolute sanctity's manifestation. They ascend early for devotions. They preserve themselves, ceremonially purified. They vocalize in murmurs when passing proximate the chamber where the ark remains. Every day transforms into an exercise within mindful reverence. The advantages commence subtly. Obed-Edom's agricultural yields grow more elevated than his adjacent residents. His livestock reproduce unusually rapidly. His offspring stay healthy while disease contacts other family units. Commercial activity prospers, surpassing normal anticipations. Information circulates that the foreigner's dwelling has transformed into a location of divine preference. David perceives the communications and wrestles with combined sentiments. Satisfaction that God's advantage persists, flowing through the ark. Envy that a foreigner experiences what the monarch himself experienced, anxiety to endeavor. Desire to deliver such advantage to Jerusalem and his personal family unit. Yet primarily David experiences the burden of instruction absorbed. The ark isn't a supernatural charm to receive relocation at human convenience. It exists as the Supreme Being's dwelling location, and the Supreme Being requires appropriate guidelines. Authority of this enormity demands cautious management, respectful separation, and absolute compliance to divine law. The monarch commences strategizing again, yet distinctively this occasion. No abbreviated methods, no innovations, no confidence in human understanding instead of divine instruction. When the ark ultimately relocates to Jerusalem, it will journey as God directed, on Levite shoulders, behind appropriate offerings, accompanied by suitable ceremony. Uzzah's death existed not arbitrary cruelty, but essential instruction. The consecrated cannot receive treatment as common. The holy requires reverence. Those who draw near divine authority must accomplish so on heaven's conditions, not their personal ones. Affection proves insufficient. Virtuous motivations cannot replace compliance. 3 months following the calamity, David experiences prepared to endeavor again, yet this occasion, every specification will pursue ancient guidelines. The ark will journey as the heavens intended, transported by individuals who comprehend both its authority and their personal restrictions. The expense of disrespect has received payment. The instruction will not receive forgetting. The ark seized. The unimaginable has transpired. For the initial occasion since Moses journeyed downward from Mount Sinai, the Ark of the Covenant has descended into adversary possession. God's golden throne remains presently within a Philistine temple, enclosed by foreign deities and unfamiliar voices. Israel grieves as though the solar body has descended from the atmosphere. The catastrophe commenced with national excessive confidence. Samuel the prophet had matured, aged. His offspring demonstrated corrupt, and the population required a monarch resembling other populations. Saul ascended to the throne amid substantial celebration, yet his governance delivered more difficulties than resolutions. The Philistines pressed more intensely than ever against Israel's boundaries, their iron armaments providing them superiority instead of bronze and stone. At Aphek, 2 military forces confronted one another across a valley that had observed blood numerous occasions previously. The Philistines possessed the elevated terrain, their arrangements disciplined and their armaments sharp. Israel's forces appeared irregular by comparison, hastily assembled militia groups navigated by individuals who recalled superior times. The initial days combating progressed badly for Israel. Retreat transformed into disorganized escape when Philistine chariots penetrated through weakened formations. 4,000 individuals expired within the powder, their physical forms distributed across the battlefield like fractured figures. The survivors retreated backward to encampment, failure bitter within their mouths. The community leaders assembled an urgent assembly as sunset colored the atmosphere crimson as blood. "Why has the Lord failed us this day?" they inquired one another, their voices vacant with distress. Israel existed as God's selected population. Triumph should have received assurance. Something had transpired fearfully incorrectly. Subsequently, someone vocalized the fateful phrases, "Allow us to deliver the ark from Shiloh. When it arrives among us, it will rescue us from our adversaries." Countenances expressed agreement surrounding the circle. Naturally, the ark had never failed them previously. Its manifestation would convert failure into success, precisely as it had at Jericho. Messengers raced throughout the darkness to Shiloh, where the ark remained within its ancient sanctuary. Hophni and Phinehas, Eli the priest's corrupt offspring, concurred to accompany the consecrated container to the battlefield. They perceived an opportunity for magnificence, an occasion to connect themselves with assured triumph. The ark arrived at sunrise, transported on Levite shoulders according to appropriate guidelines. Yet something experienced distinctive this occasion. The typical perception of tremendous manifestation appeared reduced. The golden cherubim appeared almost sorrowful within the morning illumination. Divine authority flowed surrounding the consecrated container, yet it experienced remote, hesitant, restrained by some invisible obstacle. When the soldiers observed the ark penetrating their encampment, they elevated a proclamation that trembled the earth. Israel's God has arrived to combat for us. Cheers reverberated from 1,000 throats. Armaments waved within the atmosphere. Failure transformed into confidence within the duration of a pulse beat. The Philistines perceived the proclamation and dispatched intelligence gatherers to examine. When they communicated the ark's manifestation, anxiety rippled through the adversary formations. They comprehended the accounts, Egypt's afflictions, the Red Sea's division, Jericho's barriers crashing downward. This golden container had obliterated military forces and collapsed kingdoms. "Calamity to us," the Philistine leaders proclaimed. "Who can rescue us from the possession of these extraordinary gods? These exist as the gods who struck the Egyptians with every variety of affliction within the wilderness. Exist as powerful and combat-like individuals, or you will transform into enslaved persons to the Hebrews." Anxiety transformed into frantic bravery. The Philistines comprehended they confronted extermination if they experienced failure. Superior to expire combating than exist within slavery. They established their conflict formations with the exactness of individuals who possessed nothing remaining to forfeit. The conflict commenced with trumpet explosions and battle proclamations. Israel advanced behind the ark, confident that divine authority would distribute their adversaries like grain husks before wind. The golden container radiated at the center of their arrangement, transported by priests who anticipated observing another extraordinary event. Yet no extraordinary event arrived. Philistine spears discovered their destinations. Iron blades penetrated through bronze shields. The disciplined adversary arrangements possessed solid, while Israel's formations commenced wavering. What should have existed as simple triumph transformed into frantic struggle. Hour by hour, the movement converted against God's selected population. The ark's manifestation appeared to present no defense. Individuals descended deceased within observation of the consecrated container. Projectiles moved rapidly through atmosphere that should have received sanctification by divine authority. The unimaginable was transpiring. Israel was experiencing failure despite the ark's manifestation. Fear, established as soldiers, comprehended that their ultimate armament was failing them. If the ark could not rescue them, nothing could. The retreat commenced gradually, subsequently accelerated into complete, disorganized escape. Individuals discarded their armaments and escaped for their existences. Within the disorder, catastrophe struck the consecrated container itself. The Levites transporting it stumbled and descended. Philistine military personnel encircled the ark prior to anyone could respond. Hophni and Phinehas expired, endeavoring to defend it, their corrupt existences concluding in futile heroism. Hands that had never contacted anything holy elevated the Ark of the Covenant. Foreign soldiers transported it away like common spoils, their voices elevated in triumph songs. The impossible had transpired. God's throne had received seizure by non-believers. A survivor reached Shiloh prior to sunset, his garments fractured and powder within his hair. He discovered Eli the priest remaining beside the entrance, his sightless vision directed toward the pathway. At 98 years aged, Eli had waited there throughout the day, his consciousness substantial with anxiety. "What transpired, my offspring?" the aged priest inquired, though he previously comprehended from the messenger's manifestation that information would prove fearsome. "Israel has escaped before the Philistines," the individual gasped. "There has existed substantial destruction among the population. Your two offspring exist deceased, and God's ark has received seizure." The concluding sentence struck Eli like a physical impact. He descended backward from his chair, his neck fracturing when he contacted the terrain. The distress of perceiving that the ark existed departed killed him more assuredly than any armament. Across Israel, the information circulated like disease. The ark existed departed. God's throne remained within adversary possession. Divine manifestation's representation had transformed into a trophy within a non-believer temple. How could such a possession exist as achievable? How could the Supreme Being permit his personal throne to receive seizure? Some attributed responsibility to Hophni and Phinehas for their corruption. Others indicated Saul's disobedience or the population's requirement for a monarch. A few murmured that perhaps God had abandoned them completely, disgusted with their unfaithfulness. Yet the reality existed as simpler and more fearsome. They had regarded the ark resembling a supernatural charm instead of the Most High's dwelling location. They presumed divine authority would function automatically without consideration for human faithfulness or compliance. They absorbed excessively, delayed that God's manifestation cannot receive direction, exclusively requesting. Within Philistine territory, celebrations erupted within every urban center. They had accomplished the impossible, seizing Israel's God's throne. Assuredly, this demonstrated that their personal gods existed as more powerful. Assuredly, this signified Israelite authorities' conclusion perpetually. Yet the Philistines were preparing to absorb something that Israel had forgotten. The Ark of the Covenant served exclusively one superior authority, and that superior authority existed not satisfied with his present accommodations. Dagon descends. The Ark of the Covenant remains within Dagon's temple at Ashdod, enclosed by incense, vapor, and the triumphant amusement of Philistine priests. The golden container radiates beneath illumination, source illumination, its cherubim wings projecting shadows that move across stone barriers, carved with representations of fish-bodied deities. For the initial occasion within its existence, the Supreme Being's throne remains within a non-believer sanctuary. Dagon towers overhead the seized reward, an enormous carved figure of polished stone, half individual, half aquatic creature. The ancient deity embodies abundance and prosperity to his devotees. Presentations of grain and oil encircle his foundation. Golden containers reflect lamp illumination from recesses within the barriers. This exists as Dagon's dwelling, his territory, his authority location among the Philistines. The priests congratulate themselves on their understanding. Positioning the seized ark before their deity transmits a transparent communication. Dagon has failed Israel's God within open combat. The golden container functions as demonstration of Philistine superiority, a trophy that confirms their triumph at Aphek. Darkness descends across Ashdod with unusual motionlessness. No wind disturbs the palm vegetation, no insects create sound within the darkness. Even the ocean appears quieter than customary, its waves murmuring against the shore instead of crashing. The urban center sleeps tranquilly, envisioning of continued triumphs and divine preference. Yet within the temple something stirs. The ark remains motionless within its golden magnificence, yet authority radiates from between the cherubim, resembling warmth from a metalworking location. Ancient forces activate that precede human civilization. The manifestation that vocalized from Sinai's summit commences asserting itself within this unfamiliar space. Sunrise arrives with vocalizing from the temple. The initial priest to penetrate for morning devotions discovers Dagon countenance downward upon the surface. His enormous mass somehow collapsed from its foundation. The carved figure exists prostrate before the ark, resembling a devotee bowing to a superior deity. Limbs that required 20 individuals to position presently press against cold stone within apparent capitulation. Fear circulates through the priesthood. How did this transpire? Dagon possesses several tons in mass. His foundation receives carving from a solitary stone block. No human force could have relocated him throughout the darkness. Still here he exists, descended before Israel's God's golden throne. The priests deliberate intensely within murmurs. Some propose seismic activity, though nobody experienced the terrain trembling. Others attribute sabotage, though the temple received securing and surveillance. A few murmur that perhaps Israel's God still possesses authority even within captivity. Yet practical concerns dominate theology. Dagon must receive restoration to his appropriate station prior to the population discovering what transpired. Cords and lifting mechanisms, groups of individuals straining against deceased mass, gradually elevate the descended deity backward to his platform. By midday, everything manifests customary again. The priests vocalize nothing to the urban center's governing individuals. Why establish fear instead of what might have existed as a simple occurrence? Assuredly, the darkness's unusualness existed as coincidence, nothing additional. Dagon stands proud once more, superior and governing authority of his personal temple, protector of Philistine authority. Yet, the subsequent morning delivers terror, surpassing clarification. Dagon has descended again, and this occasion the destruction proceeds, far surpassing simple collapsing. The carved figure's cranium exists, severed at the ark's foundation. Both hands have fractured off and remain proximate the boundary. Exclusively, the torso persists attached to the platform, a limbless structure that ridicules everything the deity previously embodied. Blood discolors the temple surface, though no living organism has received harm. The metallic aroma of iron combines with frankincense and myrrh. Something has expired within this consecrated space, though precisely what persists unclear. The chief priest arrives, discovering his subordinates mourning and expressing grief. Some strike their chests within sorrow. Others shield their countenances within humiliation. Their deity has not simply descended, he has received mutilation, dismemberment, obliteration. The symbolism proves unmistakable. Dagon has received execution within his personal sanctuary. Information circulates through Ashdod despite endeavors to restrain it. Citizens crowd surrounding the temple entrances, requiring to observe for themselves. When they observe Dagon's obliteration, fear erupts within the streets. Their defending deity exists within fragments. Their ancient god has received humiliation by a foreign seized object. Yet the darkness's supernatural violence demonstrates to exist as exclusively the commencement. As sunrise penetrates completely across the urban center, unusual catastrophes commence unfolding. An individual scratches at his lower region and discovers painful enlargements that weren't present the previous day. A female discovers masses within her underarm regions that pulse with every pulse beat. By afternoon, hundreds display similar indications. Painful growths materialize on physical forms throughout the urban center. The enlargements expand more extensively by the hour, rendering it suffering to proceed or remain or recline downward. Young ones vocalize with pain their guardians cannot alleviate. Adults contort within misery that no medical treatment can contact. The affliction circulates like flame through arid vegetation. Prosperous and impoverished, youthful and aged, priest and commercial individual, the growths display no preference. Complete family units huddle, united within shared suffering. The urban center's medical practitioners acknowledge helplessness before this unfamiliar disease. As days elapse, the connection transforms obvious to everyone. The affliction commenced the morning following Dagon's obliteration. The indications deteriorate each darkness. The ark persists within their temple. Explanation and consequence could not exist clearer. Israel's God is administering punishment to them for seizing his throne. Rodents emerge from underground passages and grain storage locations in unprecedented quantities. They swarm through streets within broad solar illumination, their vocalizing audible multiple blocks distant. They invade residential dwellings and commercial locations, contaminating nourishment supplies and circulating fear. The rodent invasion coincides flawlessly with the human affliction, as though the heavens and earth conspire against Ashdod. The urban centers governing individuals convene within urgent session, their personal physical forms covered with the painful enlargements. We cannot preserve Israel's God's ark, they determine unanimously. His possession exists substantial upon us and upon Dagon, our God. Yet, where can they transmit it? The resolution appears obvious. Allow another Philistine urban center address the disadvantaged artifact. Gath concurs to obtain the ark, enthusiastic to possess such a powerful trophy, despite Ashdod's warnings. The golden container journeys to Gath upon a cart, pulled by bovine animals, the operators preserving cautious separation from their cargo. As immediately as it penetrates the urban center entrances, Ashdod's affliction commences diminishing, the growths contract, the rodents vanish. Relief circulates through the population, resembling cool water upon burning flesh. Yet Gath's satisfaction demonstrates brief existence. Within days, their personal citizens develop the identical indications that tormented Ashdod. Painful enlargements materialize throughout the urban center. Rodents emerge from every dark corner. The ark's disadvantage has pursued it to its fresh dwelling. Gath's governing individuals waste no duration in transferring the difficulty along. Ekron obtains the unwanted reward with expanding anxiety. They have perceived what transpired within the alternative urban centers. They comprehend what's approaching. Yet, political requirement forces them to acknowledge the ark, rather than hazard combat with their Philistine confederates. As anticipated, Ekron's affliction surpasses even the previous eruptions. The growths expand more extensively and more painful. Death commences, stalking the urban center streets as the most vulnerable capitulate to suffering their physical forms cannot endure. The ark has transformed into an armament of mass obliteration, administering punishment to every urban center that attempts to accommodate it. 7 months elapse within mounting terror. 5 Philistine urban centers have absorbed the identical instruction. Israel's God cannot receive failure, exclusively temporarily inconvenienced. His ark delivers death and disease wherever it proceeds among his adversaries. No temple can restrain his authority. No deity can stand before his manifestation. The Philistine governing individuals assemble within frantic council. They must restore the ark to Israel. Yet how? What tribute can appease this fearsome God? How can they transmit backward his throne without acknowledging total failure? The resolution, when it arrives, will exist as unusual as everything additional concerning this golden container. Yet presently, the ark waits within Ekron's affliction-affected streets, its cherubim wings distributed across an urban center, absorbing that some triumphs expense more than failure. Restoration beneath compulsion. 7 months of terror have persuaded the Philistine governing individuals that preserving the ark signifies observing their population expire. Wherever the golden chest made its home among the cities, disease arrived as inevitably as darkness follows daylight. Swellings, rodents, mortality, the cycle echoed through every settlement where the throne of Israel's deity took residence. Action became necessary before the entire Philistine civilization transformed into a burial ground. At Gaza, the 5 leaders convened, their expressions marked by suffering and concern. Every ruler carried evidence of heaven's punishment, painful growths, making rest unbearable, anxiety invading their sleep. They had discovered what the Israelites had overlooked. The Hebrew God remained undefeatable, capable only of temporary resistance. Achish from Gath spoke first, his tone rough from nights without rest. With each passing day we retain it, more lives are lost among our citizens. Our deities provide zero defense against this affliction. Yet, returning the Ark created complicated diplomatic challenges. How does one surrender a seized weapon back to adversaries without appearing vulnerable? How does one acknowledge their God demonstrated superior strength? The strategic consequences boggled comprehension. Around the planning table, priests and soothsayers gathered, exhaustion written across their features. Months had passed, while they searched for solutions in sacrificial remains and prophetic signs, in historical writings and hushed devotions. Their ultimate guidance emerged from desperation mixed with hard-won understanding. The lead diviner counseled against sending it back without tribute. Accompany it with offerings of guilt. Create 5 golden representations of tumors plus 5 golden rodents, matching the number of your settlements. This might pacify the God of Israel and remove his affliction from our people. The symbolic meaning struck deeply. Golden duplicates of their humiliation, fashioned by Philistine craftspeople as testaments to their loss. Each swelling molded in exact detail, every rodent formed with skillful accuracy, monuments celebrating divine triumph over mortal arrogance. Yet uncertainties persisted. What method should transport this hazardous freight? Which vehicle would please a deity who destroys those making contact with his seat of power? The solution, upon arrival, bore characteristics of both heavenly examination and earthly intelligence. Construct a fresh cart, the priest proposed. Select 2 nursing cows never subjected to a yoke. Connect them to the wagon, while keeping their young calves confined separately at home. Should the cows proceed directly into Israelite lands despite separation from their offspring, this confirms the plagues originated from their God. The reasoning attracted minds, worn down by otherworldly terror. Nursing cattle instinctively remain close to their young. Removing them from feeding calves contradicts fundamental maternal drives. If these creatures disregard their babies and travel toward hostile lands, no earthly logic could explain such conduct. Preparations commenced without delay. Artisans labored continuously on the golden tributes. Every item became a flawless example of regretful artistry. The wagon materialized in a Gaza craftsman's space, constructed from superior timber and durable metal. Each aspect received meticulous consideration. This transport would bear the most perilous cargo in the ancient realm. Locating the cows presented greater difficulty. Philistine livestock keepers searched their herds for animals, satisfying the precise criteria, never subjected to labor, presently nursing, sufficiently robust for the upcoming expedition. Once the ideal pair was discovered, their offspring were instantly removed and enclosed far from the wagon. The Ark reached Gaza with substantial protection, transported by individuals maintaining deliberate separation from their load. The golden container sparkled, as magnificent and fearsome as always, its cherubim figures extending their wings in perpetual vigilance. 7 lunar cycles in Philistine possession had neither reduced its potency nor domesticated its frightening sacredness. Positioning the cargo onto the cart demanded careful exactness. Direct human contact with the Ark remained impossible. Wooden poles combined with ropes enabled maneuvering it upon the platform. The golden tributes occupied spaces alongside it. 5 swellings, 5 rodents, creative expressions of heavenly retribution. The cows received their harness with shaking hands. They bellowed sorrowfully, crying for the calves penned within audible range yet beyond access, their udders laden with milk, their motherly instincts shattering. They pulled toward their offspring's sounds. Morning arrived clear and luminous as the unusual convoy prepared for departure. No handlers controlled the cart. This needed to serve as a trial of supernatural intention exclusively. From a protected distance, the Philistine rulers observed, their pulses racing with expectation and fear. The critical instant arrived. The entrance opened wide. The pathway extended away toward Beth Shemesh, the closest Israelite settlement. Everything hinged on events unfolding in the approaching moments. The cows initiated their movement. Rather than turning toward their calves' wails, they headed straight down the road toward Israel. Their hooves struck against stone as they drew the cart onward with determination that defied natural impulse. Wonder rippled through the observing Philistines. The animals displayed zero hesitation, zero departure from their improbable route. They advanced like beings under heavenly compulsion, their gaze locked on distances they'd never witnessed. The five lords tracked from behind, unwilling to allow the ark's vanishing without confirmation. This might represent the costliest theological lesson they would ever absorb, yet they would witness its completion. Their governing futures relied on comprehending precisely what force they had encountered. Distance after distance, the cows sustained their supernatural expedition. They neither consumed food nor water nor diverted for any barrier. Where pathways divided, they selected correctly without direction. Where elevations obscured their vision, they navigated by awareness no mortal creature commands. The Philistine leaders traded looks weighted with significance. No earthly power could justify this conduct. Israel's God had absolutely caused their 7 months of torment. Their loss stood absolute, their degradation complete. By noon, Beth Shemesh's fortifications emerged on the distant view. Israelite cultivators worked their land, unaware their most sacred possession approached down the Gaza pathway. The instant of restoration drew close, the ark returning home following its most unusual banishment. The cows never wavered. They transported their valuable load through Beth Shemesh's entrance and into the central plaza, where they ultimately halted. Their otherworldly assignment accomplished, they remained breathing heavily in the afternoon heat. The Philistine lords reversed course toward their own domains, their spirits burdened with both relief and defeat. They had eliminated a curse threatening to annihilate their society. However, they had simultaneously admitted failure before their adversary's God. The trial had concluded. The judgment stood unmistakable. The Ark of the Covenant acknowledged only one sovereign, and that sovereign had summoned his throne homeward through animal mouths and the insight of the defeated. The era of Philistine supremacy had terminated. The epoch of Israel's God had commenced a fresh chapter, documented in golden swellings and directed by maternal longing in cattle. Decades in obscurity followed, the golden container dwelling in shadows presently. 20 years drifted past like murmurs in the breeze. Kiriath-Jearim guarded its mystery closely, concealed in Abinadab's residence upon a modest elevation. The individual selected to protect this sacred object approached his responsibility with profound seriousness. His offspring, Eleazar, assumed the consecrated assignment, monitoring what formerly rattled kingdoms. Israel proceeded through ordinary existence. Agricultural workers tended their crops. Parents lulled children into slumber. The ark remained in quietness, patient as bedrock. No horns proclaimed its location. No multitudes assembled to admire its strength. Recollections of its impact on the Philistines faded in ordinary consciousness. Still, those with knowledge remembered. They conversed in subdued voices regarding the container that overthrew deities and delivered afflictions. Accounts transferred from parent to child beside evening flames. The ark transformed into mythology, even while positioned merely miles distant. Separation creates legends from reality. Young adults aged without observing it. Elderly women departed having never glimpsed its brilliance. An entire generation emerged, knowing the ark solely through hushed narratives. The consecrated became remote, like celestial bodies that illuminate yet never contact the ground. Samuel the prophet continued walking among the population. He recognized where the ark rested. Occasionally he ascended the slope to Kiriath-Jearim, conversing softly with Abinadab concerning the treasure under his supervision. The aged priest comprehended the magnitude of his responsibility. Certain blessings proved too substantial for public custody. The Philistines retained memory as well. Their parents cautioned offspring against interfering with sacred items. Their religious leaders taught reverence for Israel's God, even from considerable distance. The ark's influence resonated in their shared recollection like thunder that had moved on, yet left the atmosphere still vibrating. Israel developed restlessness. They desired a monarch resembling other societies. Samuel cautioned them that mortal rulers deliver mortal difficulties. Nevertheless, the population demanded someone to guide them in combat, to establish them as formidable among societies. They overlooked that their genuine power rested dormant in a modest dwelling. The ark remained waiting. It possessed no voice for speaking, no limbs for reaching, yet its existence molded the territory like a current shapes rock, gradual, consistent, unchanging. The sacred declined to vanish, even when displaced to the margins of common life. Seasons rotated, precipitation descended, and sunlight warmed the slope at Kiriath Jearim. The ark persisted through everything, as patient as the deity residing between its golden figures. Certain power requires no platform, no observers. It simply exists. The hidden years progressed like chapters in an unread volume. Yet the narrative persisted, even in stillness. The ark retained its enigmas internally, awaiting the proper instant to surface once more into history's illumination. Power slumbers, yet power remains imperishable. David emerged. Warrior monarch. A herding youth confronted a giant. 5 polished stones occupied his satchel, though he required merely one. Goliath collapsed, and with him everything transformed. David, Jesse's son, entered destiny's spotlight, bearing a sling plus a melody in his spirit. Years flowed like tributaries merging into a current. David fled from King Saul's envious fury, sheltering in caverns and assembling fractured individuals around him. Cast-offs transformed into fighters under his guidance. He acquired leadership not from a seat of power, yet from mutual adversity. The wasteland instructed him what royal chambers never could. Saul perished on Mount Gilboa, bringing his sons with him into oblivion. The realm hemorrhaged from injuries cutting beyond blades. Israel fragmented like a fractured rock. David lamented his companion Jonathan with expressions that resonated through generations. Affection and grief traveled side by side in monarch spirits. Judah's tribe crowned David sovereign in Hebron. 7 years he governed from this southern settlement, while the northern tribes supported Saul's descendant. Internal conflict stained the territory crimson. Kinsman battled kinsman until weariness delivered understanding. David's household strengthened while Saul's household diminished like dawn vapor. Finally, all Israel approached David. They applied oil upon his skull and positioned a crown on his forehead. 30 years of age, he became sovereign of a consolidated population. The shepherd youth presently grasped the scepter of sovereignty. Heaven's commitment to a young individual anointed privately became actuality under celestial observation. David gazed northward toward Jerusalem. The Jebusite settlement perched like a jeweled crown on its mountain, unconquered and defiant. Its inhabitants ridiculed the fresh sovereign from their fortifications. "Even the sightless and disabled could prevent your entrance," they shouted. Yet David perceived what others overlooked. He understood this settlement would become his. The assault arrived from beneath. David's warriors crawled through liquid passages, feeding the settlement from concealed sources. They materialized like phantoms within the barriers. Jerusalem surrendered not to bombardment devices, yet to cleverness and bravery. David's settlement was born in one rapid nightfall. Presently, David governed from the mountain. His domain extended from Dan to Beersheba. Triumph succeeded triumph as his forces repelled every adversary. The Philistines who previously terrorized Israel retreated before his blade. Tranquility expanded across the territory like oil upon agitated liquid. However, something burdened the sovereign's consciousness. He occupied his palace of cedar and rock, recalling the ark sleeping in obscurity. The consecrated container that formerly directed Israel's forces presently accumulated dust on a remote elevation. How could the sovereign of heaven's population abandon heaven's throne in banishment? David summoned his commanders. He discussed the ark with passion in his gaze. "We have disregarded our most precious possession," he informed them. "The moment has arrived to transport it homeward," the fighters acknowledged, absorbing their sovereign's enthusiasm. They had battled for settlements and wealth. Presently they would battle for something more consecrated than both. The strategy materialized like construction, ascending stone by stone. 30,000 selected individuals would advance to Kiriath Jearim. They would transport the ark to Jerusalem with melodies and festivity. The realm would achieve completion when its mortal sovereign and celestial sovereign resided together in identical settlement. David's spirit pounded with eagerness. He had vanquished adversaries and consolidated tribes, yet this would constitute his most significant triumph. Not one with blade or lance, yet with elation and veneration. The ark would return homeward, and with it, Israel's magnificence would radiate from Zion's elevation. Mortality on the pathway. The convoy commenced like a celebration. 30,000 individuals advanced toward Kiriath Jearim with melody in their spirits. David guided them, his expression radiant with elation. Today, he transports the ark homeward. Today, Israel's magnificence returns to its legitimate position. The atmosphere itself appeared to move with eagerness. Abinadab opened his residence to the sovereign. 20 years of dedicated guardianship reached conclusion. His offspring, Uzzah and Ahio, prepared the consecrated freight with trembling hands. They understood this golden container superior to any living being. They had maintained cleanliness around it, supervised it, preserved it from inquisitive gazes. A fresh wagon awaited, constructed specifically for this consecrated load. Oxen stood prepared, their skulls decorated with blossoms and fabric. Everything needed to achieve perfection for the ark's expedition to Jerusalem. Zero aspect escaped consideration. Zero tribute proved too substantial for the Almighty's throne. The ark emerged from dimness into daylight. 20 years of concealed power presently gleamed in the dawn illumination. Gold captured the sun like imprisoned flame. The cherubim extended their wings as though prepared for flight. Even battle-tested fighters gasped at the vision. Melody filled the atmosphere. Stringed instruments sang in harmony. Hand drums maintained rhythm, while flutes contributed harmony. David personally directed the movement. His royal garments swirled as he leaped and rotated. Elation became motion. Motion became adoration. The ground itself appeared to resonate beneath their steps. The oxen initiated their gradual advance. The wagon rolled onward, bearing its valuable freight toward fate. Uzzah and Ahio walked adjacent to it, their hands constantly near the golden container. They understood its mass, its equilibrium, its valuable character. Nobody else would risk approaching so closely. The pathway extended forward like a ribbon of commitment. Jerusalem awaited just past the elevations. Shortly the ark would occupy David's settlement, and Israel would achieve wholeness. The convoy progressed like a current of festivity, bearing the consecrated toward its fresh residence. Yet the ground had alternative intentions. The oxen stumbled on irregular terrain. The wagon lurched laterally, its valuable freight sliding toward catastrophe. Uzzah observed the ark tipping, about to tumble. Response overcame reverence. His hand extended to stabilize what must remain untouched. The instant extended like infinity. Skin contacted gold in one rapid action. Uzzah's digits brushed the consecrated surface, attempting solely to safeguard what he had supervised for 20 years. Yet certain objects proved too consecrated for mortal contact. Even contact motivated by devotion. Energy surged through Uzzah's form, not visible flame, yet something more profound, more dreadful. The force residing between the cherubim figures contacted mortal skin. The protector collapsed adjacent to the precise object he attempted to rescue. His respiration departed him like a whisper, and he stirred no further. Quietness descended over the convoy like a surge. Melody expired in every voice. Moving steps halted mid-stride. The ark occupied its tilted wagon, gleaming in the abrupt stillness. Mortality had traveled among them, rapid and absolute as electricity. David stared at Uzzah's motionless form. The individual who extended assistance presently rested beyond all assistance. Anxiety displaced elation in the sovereign's consciousness. He intended to deliver blessing to Jerusalem, yet mortality had arrived instead. The consecrated requires reverence, and reverence occasionally costs beyond anyone anticipates paying. The festivity transformed into a burial ceremony. Elation shifted to grief in a heartbeat's duration. The ark, intended to deliver magnificence to David's settlement, delivers solely questions and anxiety. Certain blessings prove too hazardous for enthusiastic hands, too consecrated for uncomplicated spirits. David's ambitious strategy disintegrated like sand. The pathway to Jerusalem extended forward, yet he could not traverse it presently, not with mortality fresh in his recollection, not with the ark's dreadful power so recently displayed. The sovereign who conquered settlements discovers himself conquered by his personal veneration. Obed-Edom's fortune. Anxiety propels David backward from the Jerusalem pathway. The ark occupies its wagon like an enigma inscribed in gold. Too consecrated to contact, too sacred to disregard. Uzzah's form grows frigid in the shadow of the object he perished protecting. The sovereign who organized a festivity presently confronts a spiritual emergency. "I cannot transport this to my settlement," David addresses his commanders. His tone bears the burden of sudden understanding. "Not presently. Not until I comprehend what we're managing." The ark has demonstrated its force, rapid and absolute. Superior to exercise caution than to invite additional mortality. The convoy halts merely 3 miles from tragedy. Here stands Obed-Edom, the Gittite's residence, an uncomplicated individual with an uncomplicated existence. He opens his entrance to an improbable appeal. "Will you preserve the ark temporarily?" The sovereign requests. The individual observes the golden container, then his sovereign, then accepts. Obed-Edom has absorbed the narratives. He understands what occurred to the Philistines. He witnessed what befell Uzzah merely hours earlier. Still, he accepts this hazardous privilege with modest dignity. Perhaps foreigners comprehend enigma superior to those native to it. Perhaps separation cultivates understanding. The ark enters another modest residence. 0 celebration marks its entrance. 0 multitudes assemble to observe its positioning. Like an banished monarch, it establishes into obscurity once more. Yet this occasion feels distinct. This occasion bears anticipation like atmosphere before a tempest. David returns to Jerusalem with questions substantial on his consciousness. The settlement that was intended to receive the ark instead observes its sovereign struggle with uncertainty. How can he serve a deity whose force eliminates those who cherish him? How can he guide population toward a manifestation that annihilates the devout? Days progress into weeks. David dispatches messengers to monitor Obed-Edom. How prospers the individual housing the ark? He inquires repeatedly. The accounts return unusual and marvelous. The Gittite flourishes like vegetation planted beside flowing liquid. Obed-Edom's cultivation yields harvests beyond logic. His livestock multiply like celestial bodies in the firmament. His household develops robust and content. Offspring laugh in his courtyard. Community members approach seeking his guidance. Everything he contacts transforms to fortune. The transformation extends past one individual's boundaries. The complete vicinity experiences the alteration. Springs flow more profoundly and purely. Produce vegetation bears plenty. Even atmospheric conditions appear gentler over Obed-Edom's property. The ark delivers existence as readily as it delivered mortality. Information reaches David's palace like dawn, emerging over mountains. The ark that eliminated Uzzah presently favors Obed-Edom. Identical force that delivers mortality simultaneously delivers existence. The sovereign begins comprehending what he couldn't grasp previously. The consecrated demands reverence, yet it compensates veneration. David dispatches additional messengers. "Inform me everything," he commands. They return with accounts sounding like narratives from ancient periods. Childless females conceive, ailing creatures recuperate, fractured implements repair themselves. The ark's manifestation transforms everything within its influence. 3 lunar cycles progress like seasons in an ideal year. Spring arrives early to Obed-Edom's property. Summer delivers abundance. Autumn commits harvest past measurement. The Gittite's residence transforms into a destination of pilgrimage for those pursuing hope. David's anxiety begins transforming. The ark hasn't delivered condemnation to Obed-Edom's residence. It delivers fortune upon fortune, like precipitation on parched terrain. The sovereign recognizes his error. He feared the ark's force instead of respecting its intention. Anxiety and veneration constitute different concepts. The accounts persist flowing. Obed-Edom's understanding increases with his prosperity. His expressions bear significance among the population. His guidance assists community members resolve conflicts. The ark's manifestation doesn't solely deliver material fortune, it delivers understanding, tranquility, and comprehension. David reaches his determination. The ark belongs in Jerusalem, yet it must arrive with appropriate reverence. 0 additional rushing, 0 additional presumptions. The consecrated requires careful management, like a blade that severs both directions. It can favor or condemn, depending on the consciousness that approaches it. Strategies begin materializing in the sovereign's awareness. This occasion will differ. This occasion he'll observe the ancient regulations, the appropriate ceremonies. The ark will approach Jerusalem not as a prize, yet as what it genuinely constitutes, the throne of the existing God. Victory in Jerusalem. David examines the ancient manuscripts by flame illumination. Moses' expressions spring from the parchment like animated fire. The ark must journey on Levite shoulders, not on timber wheels. Gold and silver rods thread through consecrated loops. 0 wagon, 0 cattle, 0 abbreviated methods. Certain objects must receive attention, the traditional method. The sovereign summons priests and Levites from every portion of his domain. Approach Jerusalem, his couriers announce. Ready yourselves for consecrated labor. They materialize like tributaries flowing into a substantial current. Hundreds of individuals selected by ancestry and vocation assemble at the palace entrances. Zadok the priest, alongside Abiathar, stand before David. Their facial hair appears white with understanding, their hands steady with years of consecrated duty. "Instruct me," David expresses simply. The shepherd youth who transformed into sovereign presently transforms into pupil once more. Modesty opens barriers that arrogance maintains secured. The preparations commence like a precise movement. Every aspect matters when approaching the consecrated. The Levites cleanse themselves with liquid and offering. They abstain and pray, readying their spirits for consecrated load. 0 individual can bear heaven's throne with contaminated hands or disturbed awareness. Information circulates through Jerusalem like disturbances on motionless liquid. The ark approaches homeward, not in victory this occasion, yet in veneration. The population senses the distinction in their sovereign's methodology. David's elation persists, yet it's moderated presently with appropriate anxiety. The convoy forms distinctly this occasion. 0 multitudes of 30,000 fighters. Instead, meticulously selected individuals assume their positions. Levites position themselves surrounding the consecrated load. Priests ready incense and offering. Melody remains yet organized presently, according to ancient configuration. David guides them from Jerusalem toward Obed-Edom's residence. The dawn sun captures the brilliance of his crown and the purity of the priest's garments. This resembles less like a military demonstration and more like adoration rendered visible. Heaven contacts ground in the cadence of sandal steps. At Obed-Edom's residence, the ultimate preparations commence. The ark emerges once more into illumination, yet distinct hands approach it presently. Levites, trained from infancy for this instant, elevate the golden rods. The consecrated load establishes on their shoulders like a covering of accountability. They advance 6 steps, then halt. David has acquired patience. A bull plus a nourished calf, a weight offering. Blood flows on rock altars. Vapor ascends toward heaven like devotions rendered visible. Every 6 steps they halt to tribute the one who occupies between the cherubim. The expedition transforms into a movement of dedication. Step by step, halt by halt, the ark approaches closer to its intended residence. David's spirit pounds with regulated elation. This feels appropriate. This tributes both the consecrated and the one who renders objects consecrated. Melody ascends from trained voices and skilled hands. Stringed instruments sing harmonies older than domains. Percussion maintains rhythm like pulses. Wind instruments proclaim the approach of invisible sovereignty. Yet underneath the festivity flows a current of veneration that was absent previously. David personally moves, yet distinctly presently. His actions communicate adoration rather than mere festivity. His linen garment marks him as beyond sovereign. In this instant he functions as priest, as devotee, as the connection between heaven and ground. Jerusalem's entrances approach visibility. The settlement awaits like a bride, ready for her partner. Population lines the pathways, yet they sustain respectful separation. They've absorbed the expense of approaching the consecrated recklessly. Amazement and anxiety blend in every observing expression. The convoy passes through the entrance with the resonance of festivity restrained within boundaries of veneration. Offspring peek from behind their parents' garments. Aged individuals recall narratives their ancestors conveyed. The ark has returned homeward, and Jerusalem will never remain identical. David's shelter awaits in the location he's arranged. Uncomplicated yet pure, consecrated yet reachable. Here, the ark will occupy until Solomon constructs something more substantial. Yet for presently a shelter proves sufficient. Heaven's manifestation requires zero palace, solely pure spirits and reverent hands. The golden container establishes into its fresh residence like a sovereign assuming his seat. The Levites withdraw with precise accuracy. Incense combusts on bronze altars. The labor is accomplished. The covenant ark resides in David's settlement, and Israel achieves completion. Solomon's golden sanctuary. David's consciousness combusts with a vision that maintains him conscious at nightfall. He traverses his palace surfaces, gazing toward the shelter where the ark awaits. "I occupy in cedar construction," he informs Nathan the prophet. Yet heaven's ark resides in fabric. The sovereign's awareness disturbs him like a thorn in tender skin. Nathan's initial reaction originates from mortal reasoning. "Execute what your consciousness instructs you," the prophet expresses. "The Lord accompanies you." Yet heaven's thoughts proceed on distinct pathways than mortal logic. That nightfall, supernatural expressions approach Nathan like precipitation on arid terrain. The communication materializes with dawn illumination. "David will not construct my residence." The Lord communicates through his prophet. "His hands have distributed excessive blood in my observation." The fighter sovereign who vanquished societies cannot construct a residence for the God of tranquility. The contradiction severs profoundly yet cleanly. Still, heaven's rejection arrives enveloped in commitment. "Your offspring will construct my sanctuary. He will possess tranquility on every boundary." David's vision will not expire with David. It will flourish in his successor's hands like a seed positioned in winter that awaits spring. David accepts the supernatural determination with dignity that astonishes even himself. If he cannot construct, he will arrange. The sovereign who cannot manipulate the instrument will accumulate every fastener. His enthusiasm for heaven's residence channels into provision for heaven's residence. Gold and silver accumulate like mountains in the royal storehouse. David calculates prosperity not in domains vanquished, yet in materials assembled. Cedar timber from Lebanon, bronze from seized settlements, iron past measuring. Valuable rocks that capture illumination like imprisoned celestial bodies. The sovereign creates designs on parchment with the precision of a creator. Every dimension matters. Every aspect reflects supernatural magnificence. Though his hands will not construct, his awareness will engineer. The sanctuary materializes first in David's conception, then on manuscripts that will direct his offspring. Solomon ascends the seat with understanding past his years. The young sovereign inherits not solely a domain, yet a summons. The sanctuary his parent envisioned will ascend under his supervision. Heaven's commitment to David transforms into Solomon's accountability. The construction commences like a melody in rock. Hiram of Tyre dispatches craftspeople whose hands comprehend the dialect of magnificence. Jewish laborers acquire abilities their parents never conceived. The sanctuary ascends layer by layer, each rock severed to flawlessness before it departs the quarry. Zero instrument resonates on the sanctuary elevation. Zero metal implement contacts rock in the consecrated area. Everything materializes, prepared for its position like components of a supernatural arrangement. The construction develops in quietness that communicates more powerfully than vocalization. Veneration molds every timber and rock, 7 years' progress like seasons in an ideal garden. The sanctuary materializes like a devotion rendered visible. Gold covers cedar, bronze forms, supports that extend toward heaven. The consecrated location gleams with magnificence that renders sovereigns emotional and prophets silent. The internal sanctuary awaits like a bride arranging for her union. Here the ark will occupy, not in a shelter, yet in a residence worthy of its sacredness. Cherubim, fashioned from olive timber, extend their wings barrier to barrier. Gold covering blankets everything, transforming the chamber into a reflection of heaven. The dedication occasion materializes like dawn emerging over the realm. Solomon stands before the accomplished sanctuary, his consciousness abundant with his parents' vision accomplished. Offering combusts on altars, melody ascends from trained voices. All Israel assembles to observe the impossible rendered actual. The ark emerges from David's shelter for the ultimate occasion. Priests bear it with identical veneration they've practiced for 30 years. The golden container that traveled through wasteland and banishment presently approaches its eternal residence. The expedition that commenced at Sinai reaches its terminus on Zion. The ark enters the most consecrated location like a sovereign returning to his palace. The rods slide through golden loops, one ultimate occasion. The consecrated load establishes into the position arranged for it from the foundation of the realm. The traveling has terminated. The ark has returned homeward. Solomon dedicates the sanctuary with expressions that resonate through generations. Heaven and the supreme heaven cannot accommodate you, he prays. How considerably less this residence I have constructed. The sovereign who constructed heaven's residence comprehends that zero construction can retain the boundless. Vapor fills the sanctuary like visible magnificence. The priests cannot persist their duty, overwhelmed by the manifestation that occupies every portion. Heaven approaches to reside in the residence Solomon constructed, and the golden sanctuary transforms into the pulsating center of Israel's devotion. The most consecrated behind the curtain rests enigma more profound than ocean depths. The most consecrated location extends 30 measurements in every orientation, a flawless cube fashioned from mortal visions and supernatural instruction. Here, obscurity resides with illumination. Quietness communicates more powerfully than resonance, and the boundless contacts the boundary of duration. 2 cherubim command the consecrated area, their wings contacting barrier to barrier, Fashioned from olive timber and blanketed in struck gold, they stand 15 measurements elevated like protectors of infinity. Their expressions gaze downward toward the location where heaven contacts ground, where the ark awaits in patient magnificence. The ark occupies beneath those golden wings like a seat anticipating its sovereign. Zero chair or platform raises it. The golden container occupies on the surface, modest despite its valuable materials. Force requires zero platform when it resides in the appropriate location. The consecrated discovers its personal equilibrium. Illumination enters this chamber solely through the high priest's flame. Apertures possess zero position here. The sun that illuminates the realm cannot brighten this internal sanctuary. Solely dedicated flame can combust in the manifestation of the one who resides in unreachable illumination. The curtain that divides this location from the realm suspends like fabric between two actualities. Azure and violet and crimson threads interweave configurations that convey narratives older than domains. Cherubim movement in the material, their wings extended in eternal adoration. Zero ordinary gaze can perceive past this obstruction. Once annually, one individual enters this location. The high priest approaches with blood and incense, his consciousness arranged by abstaining and his hands by ceremonial cleansing. He adorns bells on his garment, so those external recognize he continues living. Mortality visits rapidly those who approach the consecrated recklessly. The ceremony observes configurations established by Moses personally. Blood sprinkles on the compassion, covering 7 occasions. Incense ascends like devotions rendered visible. The priest vocalizes expressions too consecrated for ordinary perception, titles too sacred for regular utterances. Here Israel's transgressions encounter heaven's pardon directly. The high priest's steps resonate peculiarly in this area. Resonance conducts distinctly where heaven contacts ground. Certain claim voices perform here when nobody stands to create melody. Others affirm quietness so profound it resonates like percussion. The consecrated creates its personal sound properties. The ark retains treasures past gold and valuable rocks. Within occupy the rock tablets Moses transported down from Sinai. Heaven's personal digit inscribed those expressions on stone that will never disintegrate. Additionally, there occupies a golden vessel of manna, sustenance from heaven, maintained for generations who never experienced wasteland. Aaron's branch rests adjacent the tablets, the staff that flowered with almonds when heaven selected Israel's priesthood. Deceased timber that flourished with existence communicates of force that renders the impossible ordinary. These objects convey Israel's narrative in representations that expressions cannot capture. The compassion covering blankets, these treasures like a covering on a valuable container. Yet this constitutes zero ordinary covering. Here the wings of golden cherubim contact, and between them resides the manifestation of the most elevated. The seat of the universe contacts ground in this one consecrated location. Nobody may gaze upon the compassion covering except the high priest on the atonement occasion. Even he approaches with vapors of incense to obscure his vision from magnificence too radiant for mortal observation. Certain objects prove too consecrated for mortal vision, too sacred for revealed expressions. The temperature here persists steady through every period. Neither summer warmth nor winter frigidity penetrates these barriers. The consecrated generates its personal atmosphere as though this chamber exists slightly external, the ordinary progression of duration and climate. Heaven's environment permeates through the curtain. When the high priest surfaces from this location, his expression occasionally radiates with reflected magnificence. Population recognizes he has occupied, where solely one individual annually may occupy, has observed what solely dedicated vision may observe. The ordinary transforms extraordinary, simply by adjacency to the consecrated. The most consecrated awaits in patient quietness through the extended months between visits. The ark preserves its mysteries, protects its enigmas, retains its treasures. Here pulses the center of Israel's devotion, circulating existence through the channels of a selected population. In this chamber, inquiries discover responses, devotions discover their terminus. The invisible transforms almost visible, the boundless almost contactable. The most consecrated stands as heaven's representation on ground, the location where two realms contact in golden quietness. The magnificence periods. Israel radiates like a precious stone, positioned in the crown of societies. Solomon's understanding attracts visitors from the boundaries of the ground. The Queen of Sheba materializes with camels, bearing aromatics and gold, yet departs with treasures superior to anything in her convoy. She has observed understanding residing in skin, magnificence rendered visible in rock and cedar. The sanctuary stands at the center of this golden epoch, like the sun at the center of its arrangement. Everything else rotates around this consecrated area where the ark awaits in patient magnificence. Pilgrims flow to Jerusalem like currents flowing toward the ocean. David's settlement transforms into heaven's settlement. Commercial pathways merge on Jerusalem like extensions on a circle. Traders recognize that Solomon's tranquility safeguards their convoys. His understanding settles their conflicts. His fairness renders contracts obligatory and commitments reliable. Abundance flows through Israel like oil through properly organized passages. The 12 tribes have disregarded their previous separations. Judah and Israel progress as one population under one sovereign. The internal conflicts that stained the territory crimson transform into remote recollections. Consolidation delivers strength, and strength delivers protection that prosperity cannot acquire. Solomon's vessels navigate every ocean, transporting back gold from Ophir and silver from Tarshish. Ivory plus primates and fowl occupy the royal storehouses. The sovereign who constructs heaven's residence discovers that heaven constructs his domain in exchange. Supernatural fortune multiplies mortal exertion past all logic. The military requires zero conflicts to demonstrate its strength. Adjacent societies observe Israel's abundance and select submission over annihilation. Tribute flows into the royal storehouse like liquid into a spring. Tranquility transforms more advantageous than conflict, understanding more valuable than armaments. Every individual occupies under his personal vine and fruit vegetation. The ancient commitment transforms into daily actuality. Offspring participate in pathways that recognize zero anxiety. Aged individuals settle conflicts with expressions instead of blades. Females extract liquid from springs without monitoring for attackers on the distance. The ark presides over this golden period like a sovereign on his seat. Concealed behind the curtain, it persists the origin of all fortune. The consecrated manifestation that formerly guided Israel through wasteland presently guides them through abundance. Heaven's seat anchors the population's elation. Celebrations occupy the sanctuary courts with festivity. 3 occasions annually, all Israel approaches Jerusalem. Passover recalls liberation from Egypt. Pentecost acknowledges the grain harvest. Tabernacles recollects the wasteland traveling. The ark observes each assembly from its concealed sanctuary. Fairness flows from Solomon's seat like liquid from a source. The sovereign who requested understanding instead of prosperity discovers that both arrive together. His determinations transform into proverbs that outlive domains. His choices settle conflicts that inferior awareness cannot resolve. The sanctuary's daily routine transforms into the cadence of national existence. Dawn and dusk offerings mark duration's progression. Incense ascends with the sun and establishes with the moon. The Levites' melodies provide the accompaniment for a population at tranquility with itself and its heaven. International unions seal strategic partnerships. Solomon's spouses deliver their societies to Jerusalem, yet they simultaneously transport Israel's influence back to their territories. The comprehension of the genuine God circulates like seeds on the breeze, establishing roots in foreign terrain. Construction projects multiply like celestial bodies in the firmament. Solomon's palace ascends near the sanctuary, magnificent yet secondary to heaven's residence. Settlements fortify their barriers, pathways connect remote regions. Infrastructure generates the structure for enduring abundance. Academics approach from every society to examine in Solomon's court. The sovereign who accumulates proverbs simultaneously accumulates understanding individuals. Philosophy and verse flourish under royal support. Israel's golden epoch transforms into a golden epoch of mortal acquisition. The ark occupies in assurance during these magnificent periods. Zero adversaries threaten its sanctuary, zero catastrophes disturb its foundation. The traveling years appear like visions from another epoch. This constitutes what the committed territory was always intended to constitute, a location where heaven resides among his population in tranquility. Still, even in the golden noon of Solomon's governance, obscurity begins assembling at the boundaries. The sovereign's consciousness gradually shifts from the uncomplicated dedication of his youth. Foreign spouses deliver foreign deities. Prosperity transforms into its personal temptation. The magnificence periods bear within them the seeds of their personal termination, separation and deterioration. Solomon's consciousness develops burdened with beyond understanding. 1,000 spouses occupy his palace, each delivering her personal deities and traditions. The sovereign who constructed the sanctuary for the Lord presently constructs elevated locations for Ashtoreth and Molech. Compromise penetrates into his being, like liquid through fractured rock. The load of magnificence transforms into a burden too substantial for one individual's shoulders. Financial burdens ascend to finance the sovereign's construction projects. Compulsory labor removes individuals from their families and cultivation. The abundance that formerly favored all Israel presently serves primarily the crown. The population who formerly favored their sovereign begin complaining against him. Heaven's tolerance possesses boundaries, even for sovereigns. The prophet Ahijah locates Jeroboam in the cultivation and tears his fresh garment into 12 components. Acquire 10 components, the prophet expresses. You will govern 10 tribes of Israel. The domain that David consolidated begins fragmenting, while Solomon continues breathing. Still, for David's benefit, the condemnation awaits. Solomon expires in his resting place, his governance terminated, yet his succession maintained. The offspring who constructed heaven's residence slumbers with his ancestors, departing behind magnificence tarnished by compromise. Rehoboam assumes the seat with his parents' crown, yet not his parents' understanding. The assembly assembles at Shechem to crown the fresh sovereign. Yet before they present allegiance, they create an appeal. Your parents' burden was substantial, the elders express. Render our load lighter, and we will serve you. The young sovereign confronts his initial trial, and the domain's destiny suspends on his response. Aged individuals counsel tolerance. Serve the population today, they recommend, and they will serve you perpetually. Yet young voices murmur distinct guidance. Demonstrate them strength, they encourage. Render their burden more substantial still. Rehoboam attends to peers instead of counselors, to arrogance instead of understanding. The response arrives like a strike. My parent rendered your burden substantial, yet I will render it more substantial still. He disciplined you with strikes, yet I will discipline you with barbs. The expressions seal the domain's destiny. Israel's consolidation fractures like a clay vessel dropped on rock. 10 tribes advance away from Jerusalem, pursuing Jeroboam toward a distinct fate. Solely Judah and Benjamin persist, dedicated to David's household. The domain that stood consolidated for 80 years, fragments down the center, never to restore. During the periods of mortal sovereigns, Jeroboam confronts an emergency that threatens his fresh governance. His population continues desiring to adore in Jerusalem, where the sanctuary stands and the ark awaits. If they expedition southward 3 occasions annually, their consciousnesses might pursue their steps. The northern sovereign requires deities of his personal. Golden cattle ascend in Dan and Bethel. Observe your deities, O Israel, Jeroboam announces, resonating Aaron's ancient transgression. These transported you from Egypt. The falsehood tastes pleasant to perception. Developed weary of extended expeditions to Jerusalem, convenience vanquishes awareness in the mortal consciousness. The ark observes this separation from its golden sanctuary. Concealed behind the curtain, it persists in the south, while half the population departs. The domain fragments, yet the consecrated center maintains. Heaven's seat remains where Solomon positioned it, unchanging, while everything else transforms. Internal conflict erupts like a mountain between the sister domains. Jeroboam and Rehoboam elevate forces against each other. Jacob's offspring elevate blades against their kinsmen. The tranquility that favored Israel for 40 years hemorrhages away in fraternal conflict. Foreign adversaries observe opportunity in Israel's separation. Shishak of Egypt advances northward with vehicles and cavalry. He strips the sanctuary of its golden treasures, transporting away the protection Solomon created for ceremonial demonstrations. The magnificence begins tarnishing fortune by valuable fortune. Prophets materialize to vocalize heaven's expression to unreceptive perception. Elijah stands on Mount Carmel, summoning flame from heaven. Elisha executes miracles that recall the population of their heaven's force. Yet the domains persist their rotation toward condemnation. Supernatural tolerance diminishes, like fabric rubbed excessively frequently. The northern domain transforms successions like an individual transforms garments. Sovereign after sovereign ascends and descends, each more corrupt than the previous. Elimination transforms into the pathway to force. Stability transforms into a recollection from the golden periods that appear like visions. Judah performs superior, yet not satisfactorily. David's lineage persists on the seat, yet not every successor pursues David's consciousness. Favorable sovereigns alternate with corrupt ones. Reform movements ascend and descend like surges on a disturbed ocean. The ark persists in its position, yet fewer consciousnesses turn toward its residence. Prophets and cautions. Isaiah traverses the pathways of Jerusalem with visions combusting in his vision. The young prophet observes the Lord occupying on a seat elevated and raised. Seraphim vocalize, consecrated, 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 while the sanctuary foundations tremble. Yet when Isaiah gazes at his population, he observes consciousnesses developed frigid and hands stained with unfairness. The expressions that flow from the prophet's utterances sever like acute blades. Your fresh moons and celebrations my being detests, he proclaims in the sanctuary courts. They have transformed into a load to me. The precise location where the ark resides resonates with supernatural frustration. Religious ceremony without righteous existence transforms into resonance in heaven's perception. Judah's sovereigns attend to Isaiah's cautions with perception that perceive yet don't comprehend. King Ahaz confronts invasion from the north and south. Instead of relying the heaven whose seat occupies behind the sanctuary curtain, he dispatches gold to Assyria for assistance. The treasures that formerly tributed heaven presently acquire safeguarding from foreign sovereigns. Hezekiah demonstrates distinct from his parent. When Assyrian forces surround Jerusalem like predators around livestock, the favorable sovereign extends their threatening correspondence before the Lord in the sanctuary. You who occupy between the cherubim, he prays, demonstrate the societies that you exclusively constitute heaven. The ark's manifestation delivers burden to his expressions. That nightfall, mortality traverses through the Assyrian encampment. 185,000 soldiers breathe their ultimate without conflict or affliction. Dawn discloses a force transformed into a burial ground. Sennacherib retreats back to Nineveh, his declarations transformed to residue. The deity who resides above the ark demonstrates his force to those who rely his title. Yet even favorable sovereigns create unfortunate selections. When Babylonian representatives approach to congratulate Hezekiah on his recuperation from ailment, he demonstrates them everything, every treasure, every armament, every mystery of his domain. Arrogance opens barriers that understanding should maintain secured. Isaiah's declaration descends like a striking force. Periods are approaching when everything in your palace will be transported away to Babylon. Zero will persist. The sovereign who rescued Jerusalem from Assyria establishes it up for annihilation by Babylon. The destiny casts obscurity over the present, like tempest vapors assembling on a clear period. Manasseh assumes the seat when his parent expires, and with it arrives an obscurity more profound than nightfall. The young sovereign dismantles his parent's reforms like an individual, annihilating his personal residence. Altars to foreign deities ascend in the sanctuary courts. The consecrated transforms profane under his corrupt governance. The ark observes in quietness, as repugnance occupies the residence constructed for sacredness. Manasseh even establishes a fashioned representation in the sanctuary itself, contaminating the courts where solely pure adoration should reside. Heaven's manifestation persists, yet it persists in sorrow. Jeremiah commences his prophetic assignment while continuing a youth. I constitute solely offspring. He objects when heaven summons him, yet supernatural expressions occupy his utterance like flame confined in his structure. He cannot maintain quietness while his population rushes toward condemnation like an equine charging into conflict. The young prophet's communication severs against the prevalent disposition. While false prophets commit tranquility, Jeremiah vocalizes of approaching annihilation. While others rely in the sanctuary's manifestation to safeguard them, he cautions that ceremony without righteousness delivers condemnation instead of protection. Do not rely in deceptive expressions, Jeremiah vocalizes in the sanctuary courts. Sanctuary of the Lord, sanctuary of the Lord, sanctuary of the Lord. The population considers the construction itself provides safeguarding. They disregard that heaven resides not in barriers of rock, yet in consciousnesses of skin that tribute his commands. The prophet's expressions demonstrate unpopular, yet genuine. Sovereigns ascend and descend, while Babylon develops stronger. Nebuchadnezzar's forces advance westward like an unstoppable surge. The modest domain of Judah stands in their pathway like livestock before a predator. Jeremiah mourns for his population, yet he simultaneously arranges them for banishment. Construct residences in Babylon, he inscribes to those already transported captive. Position gardens and consume their produce. Pursue the prosperity of the settlement where I have dispatched you. The prophet who vocalizes of condemnation simultaneously vocalizes of expectation past condemnation. The ark occupies in the most consecrated location through all these disturbed years. Sovereigns transform, yet the consecrated persists steady. Prophets vocalize, yet the golden seat preserves its personal guidance. Conflicts, rage, yet the compassion covering awaits in patient quietness for consciousnesses that will genuinely pursue tranquility. Josiah transforms sovereign at 8 years of age, yet his youth doesn't prevent reform. When laborers repair the sanctuary, they discover the regulation volume concealed like treasure in the barriers. The young sovereign perceives Moses' expressions and tears his garments in sorrow regarding how substantially his population have traveled from the ancient pathways. The substantial reform commences like spring following a rigid winter. Elevated locations disintegrate before the sovereign's enthusiasm. Foreign altars combust like combustion. The Passover returns to Jerusalem with elation not observed since Solomon's period. For a brief instant, it appears the domain might turn back to heaven. Yet, the reform contacts regulations beyond consciousnesses. When Josiah expires battling Pharaoh Necho at Megiddo, his reforms expire with him. His offspring return to the corrupt methods of their ancestors. The brief spring of righteousness diminishes into the winter of approaching condemnation. The prophet's cautions develop more pressing as the termination approaches. depart from Jerusalem, they vocalize. The annihilator approaches from the north. Yet the population relies in false protections. They consider the sanctuary's manifestation renders them uncontactable. They disregard that even consecrated locations can receive condemnation. The Babylonian enclosure. The year constituted 587 BCE. Vapor ascended from Jerusalem's barriers like obscure devotions to a vacant firmament. King Nebuchadnezzar's force surrounded the consecrated settlement, their bronze armaments glinting in the wasteland sun. Within the barriers, population clutched their offspring and murmured frantic devotions. The enclosure had endured 18 lunar cycles. Nourishment depleted weeks earlier, liquid developed limited. Offspring vocalized with vacant vision, while their parents performed ancient melodies to quiet their appetite. The sanctuary stood elevated, yet even its golden barriers couldn't protect the settlement from what approached. Nebuchadnezzar constituted zero ordinary conqueror. He governed the most substantial empire the realm had recognized. His suspended gardens constituted legends. His forces constituted unstoppable. Yet Jerusalem retained something he desired beyond gold or domain. The settlement housed mysteries that could transform any sovereign into a deity. The Babylonian soldiers constructed their enclosure structures closer each period. Their striking implements pounded against entrances that had never surrendered. Their projectile warriors dispatched arrows like fatal precipitation over the barriers. The resonance of fragmenting timber resonated through pathways where prophets formerly traversed. Within the sanctuary, priests executed their daily ceremonies. The most consecrated persisted sealed behind its substantial fabric. The ark occupied silent in the obscurity, retaining the rock tablets Moses had transported down from Sinai. Its golden cherubim observed over vacant chambers as the settlement expired around them. King Zedekiah traversed his palace surfaces. His counselors murmured conflicting guidance. Certain expressed combat to mortality. Others pleaded him to surrender. The sovereign's vision persisted, turning toward the sanctuary. He recognized what treasures rested concealed there. He simultaneously recognized what losing them would signify. The ultimate assault approached at dawn. Babylonian soldiers flowed through fractured entrances like liquid through a damaged barrier. They established flame to residences and commercial structures. They extracted vocalizing families from their dwellings. The sanctuary protectors battled courageously, yet were rapidly overwhelmed. Nebuchadnezzar's commander, Nebuzaradan, directed the assault on the sanctuary itself. His individuals fractured through the external courts with bronze implements. They liquefied downward golden containers and positioned silver treasures onto transport. Each chamber they entered disclosed fresh marvels to seize. Yet when they reached the most consecrated, something peculiar occurred. The soldiers hesitated. The chamber experienced distinct, consecrated, hazardous. They dismantled the fabric and entered within, anticipating to discover the most substantial treasure of all. The chamber constituted vacant. Where the ark should have occupied, solely particles persisted. Zero golden container, zero rock tablets, zero cherubim extending wings. Solely vacant area, where the most forceful object in the realm had formerly occupied. Nebuzaradan investigated every portion. His individuals dismantled the surface rocks. They ascended into concealed areas behind the barriers. They discovered zero. The Covenant Ark had vanished like dawn vapor. The commander reported back to his sovereign with confusion in his tone. They had seized the settlement. They had combusted the sanctuary. They had acquired thousands of captives. Yet the one object that mattered most had departed. Certain captives affirmed the priests had concealed it. Others expressed angels had transported it away. A small number murmured that the ark had simply returned to heaven when the sanctuary descended. Nobody recognized the actuality. The enigma commenced that period and persists still. The Babylonians acquired everything else: golden illumination holders, silver containers, bronze supports, elevated beyond vegetation. They positioned transport, following transport with sanctuary treasures. Yet, the most substantial prize had moved through their grasp like liquid. Jerusalem combusted for periods. The sanctuary barriers disintegrated into fragments. The most consecrated rested exposed to the firmament. Precipitation descended on rocks that had never experienced solar illumination. The consecrated had transformed ordinary terrain. Thousands of Jews were advanced eastward toward Babylon. They bore recollections of their departed sanctuary and narratives of their absent ark. Offspring native in banishment would develop perceiving murmured accounts of the golden container that formerly retained heaven's manifestation on ground. The Babylonian enclosure terminated beyond a domain. It sealed a section in mortal chronicle. The covenant ark, which had directed forces and overthrown settlements, which had delivered afflictions and fortunes, which had housed the precise expressions of heaven, had vanished from the realm. Yet vanishing constitutes not identical to expiring. The ark's narrative remained substantially from terminated. Its absence would demonstrate as forceful as its manifestation had ever constituted. The pursuit would commence instantly and persist for centuries. Sovereigns and priests, warriors and treasure pursuers would expend their existences, pursuing obscurity of what formerly constituted. The Babylonian enclosure acquired numerous objects from Jerusalem. It acquired existences and freedom, gold and magnificence. Yet it could not acquire the recollection. The ark persisted in narratives conveyed around banishment flames. It survived in visions of return and restoration. It persisted in the expectation that what constituted departed might someday receive discovery again. Theories of vanishing. The ark vanished without departing traces. Zero ancient recorder documented its destiny. Zero observer described its ultimate instance. One period it constituted there, the subsequent it had departed. This quietness generated area for countless theories to develop. The most uncomplicated explanation constitutes frequently the most agonizing. When Babylonian soldiers invaded the sanctuary, they might have annihilated everything they discovered. Bronze liquefies readily in intense flame. Gold can receive striking into fresh configurations. Even consecrated objects transform raw materials when empires descend. Yet this theory disturbs numerous devotees. How could something so consecrated simply combust away? The ark had survived Egyptian servitude and wasteland travels. It had traversed the Jordan current and vanquished Jericho. Would heaven genuinely permit it to expire in Babylonian flames? Another possibility constitutes that sanctuary priests observed the termination approaching. Prophets had cautioned of Jerusalem's annihilation for years. Understanding individuals might have concealed the ark before adversary soldiers materialized. They could have sealed it in subterranean chambers or transported it to protection in remote territories. This theory possesses romantic attraction. It proposes the ark continues existing somewhere, anticipating the appropriate instant to return. Treasure pursuers appreciate this concept. It delivers them something to pursue past vacant apertures in the terrain. Certain academics indicate Jeremiah's declarations. The prophet vocalized of concealing consecrated objects until Israel's restoration. He references mysterious locations where consecrated objects would occupy securely. His expressions hint at arrangement for catastrophe, not passive acceptance of loss. The timing supports this theory. Jerusalem's enclosure endured 18 lunar cycles. The sanctuary priests possessed substantial duration to organize. They could have transported the ark outward component by component. They might have concealed it in caverns or positioned it in wasteland particles. Yet, where would they transport it? Egypt possessed robust Jewish populations. The ark might have journeyed southward down ancient commercial pathways. Ethiopian traditions affirm it materialized in their elevations, transported by departing priests who pursued sanctuary substantially from Babylonian forces. Another theory proposes the ark never departed Jerusalem. It might occupy beneath the sanctuary elevation, sealed in chambers that ground movements positioned more profoundly over duration. Contemporary excavations remain prohibited in this consecrated location, so the theory cannot receive examination. The Ark could rest 50 measurements below tourist sandals without anyone recognizing. Certain consider King Josiah relocated the Ark years before the Babylonian enclosure. This sovereign had purified thoroughly, annihilating foreign altars and reforming sanctuary adoration. He might have concealed the Ark during these transformations, safeguarding it from destiny threats. The Dead Sea manuscripts reference a concealed treasure manuscript. This ancient document catalogues consecrated objects positioned in mysterious locations. Certain entries correspond sanctuary artifacts that vanished during the Babylonian conquest. The manuscript might constitute a treasure diagram departed by departing priests. Religious traditions present supernatural explanations. Certain express the Ark returned to heaven when its mortal intention terminated. Others consider it transformed invisible, manifest yet concealed, until the realm deserves to observe it again. These theories cannot receive demonstration or refutation. Archaeological evidence persists frustratingly minimal. Zero ancient location has produced Ark fragments. Zero inscription describes its concealing location. Zero burial representation demonstrates its ultimate expedition. The Ark vanished so absolutely it might never have existed at all. Still, this absence demonstrates zero. The ancient realm constituted vast and predominantly unexplored. Wasteland particles shift and position mysteries. Mountain caverns collapse and seal their contents. Ocean currents transport vessels to unknown shores. The Ark could occupy anywhere on ground. Contemporary technology presents fresh expectation for previous pursuits. Terrain-penetrating detection can observe through solid rock. Satellite representations disclose position structures. Biological analysis can identify minute fragments. Yet these implements cannot pursue everywhere, and they cannot enter the most probable concealing locations. The strategic situation complicates everything. The sanctuary elevation occupies at the center of competing religious affirmations. Excavating there could initiate conflicts. Numerous governments restrict archaeological labor in sensitive regions. The Ark might persist concealed, not because it cannot receive discovery, yet because it cannot receive secure pursuit. Each theory possesses dedicated pursuers. Ethiopian Christians protect their ancient sanctuaries. Jewish academics examine every text for indications. Christian mystics pray for supernatural disclosure. Muslim traditions incorporate the Ark in their consecrated chronicles. Everyone desires to resolve the enigma. Yet perhaps the enigma constitutes the intention. The departed Ark captures mortal conception in methods the discovered Ark never could. Its absence generates longing. Its quietness demands consideration. Its vanishing ensures its perpetuity. The theories multiply with each progressing year. Fresh documents surface. Recent interpretations materialize. Technology discloses concealed possibilities. The pursuit persists because the inquiries persist unanswered. And so the Ark occupies somewhere between chronicle and mythology, between what constituted and what might constitute. Its vanishing marks the commencement of its genuine force. Departed objects cast more extended obscurity than discovered ones ever execute. The Ethiopian affirmation. Elevated in the Ethiopian mountains, where aerial predators soar above ancient sanctuaries, protectors preserve a mystery they affirm constitutes 3,000 years previous. In the consecrated settlement of Axum, behind rock barriers and metal entrances, they express the covenant Ark has discovered its ultimate residence. The sanctuary of Our Lady Mary of Zion stands like a fortification against duration. Its barriers constitute substantial and weathered. Its structures extend toward African firmaments. Within these barriers, Ethiopian Orthodox priests sustain a tradition that commenced, they express, when Jerusalem descended to Babylonian forces. Their narrative commences with Solomon and Sheba. The Ethiopian monarch journeyed northward to examine Solomon's understanding. She materialized with gold and aromatics, frankincense and valuable rocks. Yet she departed with something substantially more valuable than anything she had transported. According to Ethiopian mythology, Sheba bore Solomon an offspring titled Menelik. This royal offspring developed in his parents' mountain domain, yet longed to encounter his celebrated parent. When he reached maturity, he expeditioned to Jerusalem with a substantial convoy. Solomon received his offspring with elation and festivity. He demonstrated him the sanctuary treasures and instructed him royal understanding. Yet when duration arrived for Menelik to return homeward, the young royal offspring acquired something with him that Solomon never intended to deliver. The narrative affirms Menelik seized the covenant ark. He substituted it with a clever duplicate and transported the genuine ark southward to Ethiopia. There, it has persisted ever since, safeguarded by an uninterrupted succession of protector devotees. This account emerges in the Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's national chronicle. The volume conveys how the ark delivered heaven's fortune to the Ethiopian elevations. It clarifies why their domain flourished while others descended. It validates their ancient affirmation to constitute heaven's selected population. Yet Chronicle conveys a distinct narrative. Solomon and Sheba existed centuries before the ark vanished. If Menelik existed at all, he could not have acquired the ark that Nebuchadnezzar's soldiers failed to discover. The chronology simply doesn't function. Ethiopian priests present alternative clarifications. Certain express the ark materialized during the Babylonian conquest, transported by departing sanctuary priests. Others affirm Jewish refugees delivered it centuries subsequently. The aspects transform, yet the foundation affirmation persists steady. The present protector constitutes a devotee selected for existence. He resides exclusively in a modest chapel adjacent the primary sanctuary. He cannot depart the terrain. He cannot vocalize to external individuals regarding what he protects. He cannot even gaze directly at the object he safeguards. This protector, titled the Preserver of the Ark, pursues regulations transferred through generations. He prays constantly. He abstains regularly. He sustains ceremonial cleanliness through precise observance of ancient regulations. His existence rotates around an object most population never observe. Solely, the protector can approach the ark directly. Other priests serve the sanctuary, yet sustain their separation from the consecrated artifact. Even the Ethiopian Orthodox Patriarch cannot require to observe what rests behind the chapel's secured barriers. The hidden nature drives both conviction and doubt among people. Those who believe insist the sacred chest is far too pure for ordinary viewing. They reference scriptural cautions regarding improper interaction with hallowed items. They contend that its concealment actually validates its genuineness. Those who doubt observe that assertions lacking proof stay merely assertions. They puzzle over why Ethiopian monarchs never leveraged it to strengthen their authority, assuming it truly sits in Axum. They ask whether anything substantial really exists behind all the ritual. Meanwhile, the Ethiopian government backs the church's position while keeping careful political separation. The tourism industry profits from the enigma. Worshippers come from across the globe hoping to witness something sacred, something truly sacred. Axum's financial situation relies partially on visitors attracted by the supposed location of this relic. Archaeological findings show mixed results. Axum was certainly a mighty ancient realm with ties to both Israel and Egypt. Hebrew settlements were established in Ethiopia many centuries back. The cultural interactions happened for real, even though the particular ark assertions lack verification. Modern efforts to examine the object have all been unsuccessful. The religious institution denies external inquiry. Dating through carbon analysis demands samples they refuse to surrender. Imaging with X-ray technology needs access they decline to authorize. The enigma endures because confirmation cannot happen. Certain visitors describe unusual encounters around the chapel grounds. They mention sensations of tremendous force or surprising tranquility. Photography equipment stops functioning. Battery-powered devices lose their charge rapidly. Whether these occurrences point to otherworldly presence or human expectation stays ambiguous. The yearly Timkat festivities offer hints about what might lie concealed. Religious leaders transport reproduction arks during vibrant parades. They consecrate water and perform baptism ceremonies. Yet the authentic ark, assuming it exists, stays locked beyond public observation. Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity possesses ancient foundations and time-honored practices. Their assertions merit thoughtful attention, even lacking supporting proof. Their belief system has withstood oppression and military conquest. Their society retains memories other civilizations have forgotten. Still, conviction and historical study follow separate standards. What faithful followers embrace as reality, historians need to investigate as potential truth. The Ethiopian assertion stays unconfirmed, though not beyond possibility. The sacred chest could sit in Aksum's mountainous terrain, protected by dedicated monks. This account uncovers more profound realities regarding human character and sacred mystery. Humans require holy spaces and blessed objects. They yearn for attachment to something larger than their individual selves. Whether the actual ark dwells in Ethiopia holds less significance than what its location would signify. The Ethiopian assertion persists because it fulfills meaningful functions. It upholds cultural distinctiveness. It draws worldwide focus. It safeguards age-old customs in a swiftly transforming world. The ark, whether tangible or representative, stays vibrant in Africa's highlands. And maybe that suffices. Maybe the pursuit holds more value than the discovery. Maybe the narrative serves truth even as facts stay hard to grasp. The Ethiopian protectors maintain their watch, regardless of whether others accept their account. The Jeremiah account. When shadows descended over Jerusalem like gathering storms, a single voice rang louder than every other. Jeremiah the prophet moved through the city pathways with moisture on his cheeks and intensity in his speech. He perceived what approached before others dared to acknowledge it. This prophet had observed kings dismissing warnings and religious leaders corrupting holy practices. He had witnessed the temple transform into a commercial space and heard God's identity invoked to defend wrongdoing. His spirit shattered with each prediction of catastrophe he felt compelled to proclaim. However, Jeremiah served as more than simply a herald of devastation. Early writings suggest he also functioned as guardian of hallowed possessions. As disaster drew near, someone needed to rescue what remained salvageable. Someone needed to preserve hope for coming generations. This account originates in ancient manuscripts that initial Christians valued deeply. The second book of Maccabees relates a narrative that historians argue over, but fortune seekers fantasize about. It mentions Jeremiah taking initiative as Babylonian forces moved toward Jerusalem. Based on this version, the prophet gained heavenly instruction as enemy armies neared Jerusalem. He received direction to save the most sacred items from the temple before they faced destruction or capture. This task demanded total secrecy and unwavering trust. Jeremiah assembled reliable assistants during nighttime darkness. They accessed the temple via concealed corridors that only clergy understood. Laboring under lunar light, they cautiously raised the covenant's ark from its position in the innermost sanctuary. Removing it surely felt devastating. The ark had resided in that holy chamber for 400 years. It had served as the focal point of Israel's devotion and the representation of divine presence alongside his followers. Taking it elsewhere seemed like deserting their spiritual dwelling. Yet Jeremiah grasped the broader intention. The temple faced destruction, yet the ark might survive. The nation would crumble, yet the covenant might persist. Through concealing these sacred items, he preserved the future of belief itself. The prophet's small band transported their invaluable cargo beyond Jerusalem beneath darkness's protection. They journeyed eastward toward the Jordan River, advancing carefully to prevent detection. Every footstep carried them farther from their cherished city and deeper into the unknown. Their final location was Mount Nebo, the identical summit where Moses had observed the promised territory before passing. This mountain held particular importance for Israel. It symbolized both conclusions and new starts, both sorrow and expectation. It proved the ideal location for sacred concealment. Along Mount Nebo's hillsides, Jeremiah located a cavern that appeared designed for their mission. The opening was tight and readily hidden. The chamber inside was moisture-free and roomy. Most crucially, it sat distant from any pathways or communities where inquisitive individuals might uncover it. The prophet, alongside his helpers, transported the ark far into the cave's depths. They also carried the meeting tent, the incense altar, and additional holy containers from the temple. Everything that could be preserved was collected in this secret sanctuary. After the items were positioned securely, Jeremiah closed the cave opening. The spot was indicated in methods that future generations might comprehend, yet random travelers would never recognize. The prophet carried the secret away when he departed. The writing states that Jeremiah declared prophetically regarding his deeds. He indicated the spot would stay hidden until God assembled his followers once more. When timing proved appropriate, the concealed valuables would emerge. Heavenly glory would return to Israel. Certain followers desired to identify the cave's position more explicitly. They proposed constructing cairns or inscribing marks that would direct future quests. Yet Jeremiah prohibited such indicators. He demanded that human reasoning must not interfere with heavenly timing. The prophet announced that the hiding location would stay secret until the correct moment came. No measure of searching would uncover it ahead of schedule. Only after God's intentions were accomplished would the cave surrender its valuables. Until that time, the ark must remain in shadow. This narrative has sparked numerous quests across the ages. Mount Nebo isn't an enormous mountain, and caverns can be investigated methodically. Yet, despite many expeditions, nobody has located proof of Jeremiah's concealment site. Certain searchers assert they've found sealed caverns that could hold ancient items. Others mention strange occurrences on the mountain, peculiar electromagnetic measurements, equipment breakdowns, or experiences of overpowering presence. Yet tangible verification stays elusive. The account appeals to individuals who maintain that sacred items cannot merely vanish. If the ark survived Egypt and the wilderness, Philistine imprisonment, and David's relocation, certainly it wouldn't burn in Babylonian fires. Jeremiah's action offers a reasonable explanation for its continued existence. Archaeological investigations of Mount Nebo have uncovered early communities and Byzantine religious structures. The mountain obviously held spiritual importance for numerous generations, yet no excavation has revealed temple valuables or indicators of Jeremiah's cavern. The political circumstances complicate contemporary quests. Mount Nebo sits in Jordan close to sensitive territorial boundaries. Archaeological activity demands governmental authorization and worldwide collaboration. Informal treasure seeking is prohibited, and scholarly excavation advances gradually. Still, the account endures because it provides hope facing loss. When everything collapses, perhaps someone labors behind the scenes protecting what holds greatest importance. When shadow engulfs the world, perhaps illumination is being deliberately preserved for improved times. This narrative reflects more profound realities regarding faith and preservation. In each generation, certain individuals feel summoned to shield sacred possessions from destructive powers. They labor quietly, frequently without acknowledgement, to guarantee that treasures endure through difficult periods. Whether Jeremiah truly concealed the ark in a cavern on Mount Nebo might hold less significance than what this narrative teaches regarding bravery and vision. The prophet's demonstration inspires individuals to accept responsibility for safeguarding what they treasure most deeply. The account proposes that certain possessions are too valuable to disappear permanently. They might vanish temporarily, hidden from those who would misuse or annihilate them, yet they await patiently for the moment when they can return to light once more. The Knights Templar and stories from medieval times. When Christian forces traveled eastward to recapture the Holy Land, they brought more than weapons and armor. They transported aspirations of locating treasures that would release heaven's authority on earth. Among every relic they pursued, none seized their thoughts like the missing Covenant's Ark. The initial crusade seized Jerusalem in 1099 following a violent siege. Western warriors walked on streets where Jesus had taught and David had celebrated. They investigated remnants of Solomon's temple and hunted for items that might still rest buried under ages of debris. These fighters were realistic individuals who grasped the worth of holy objects. Sacred items drew pilgrims, and pilgrims delivered wealth. More significantly, controlling items touched by heavenly power could validate assertions to govern captured territories. The Knights Templar arose from this setting of devotion and aspiration. Established around 1120, they started as a modest band committed to safeguarding Christian travelers on perilous roads. Yet they rapidly transformed into something considerably more intricate and enigmatic. The Templars built their command center on the Temple Mount straight above where Solomon's temple had previously existed. They constructed their quarters over the ancient remains and dedicated decades digging underneath the sacred platform. What they located in those passages remains among history's great mysteries. Medieval chroniclers murmured regarding secret Templar findings. Certain individuals claimed the warriors had discovered the Covenant's Ark throughout their excavations. Different accounts said they located early scrolls holding divine mysteries. A handful insisted they had discovered treasures that rendered them wealthy past conception. The reality proves harder to establish than the accounts. The Templars truly became extraordinarily wealthy throughout their 200 years of operation. They created worldwide banking networks and obtained enormous holdings throughout Europe. Their prosperity seemed to originate from sources exceeding simple contributions. Certain historians propose the warriors discovered something precious underneath the Temple Mount. Precious metals from early hoards might clarify their swift wealth accumulation. Holy items could explain their sway with religious leaders and monarchs. The Ark symbolized more than wealth to medieval thinking. It represented heavenly approval and boundless authority. Any organization asserting to control it could defend nearly any deed. The Templars never made such assertions openly, yet whispers accompanied them wherever they traveled. Their rituals were performed in complete secrecy. Fresh members pledged vows of silence regarding Templar practices and holdings. The warriors created their personal traditions that appeared to combine Christian belief with enigmatic components adapted from different customs. Opponents charged them with heresy and demon veneration. Advocates commended their commitment and combat ability, yet everyone concurred that the Templars protected mysteries they disclosed to no strangers. The substance of those mysteries stays contested to this moment. The organization's destruction arrived abruptly and violently. In 1307, King Philip IV of France commanded the concurrent detention of every Templar in his realm. He charged them with sacrilege, immoral behavior, and venerating false deities. The accusations were likely fabricated, yet they fulfilled Philip's objectives. Through torture, certain Templars admitted to shocking offenses. They acknowledged spitting on crosses and embracing each other inappropriately. Several claimed to have venerated an enigmatic head named Baphomet. Most contemporary historians reject these admissions as results of legal torture. Yet the admissions referenced one fascinating element. Multiple Templars mentioned a hidden item that granted their organization particular authority. They couldn't characterize it precisely, yet they maintained it was more precious than precious metals or gemstones. Certain historians question if they intended the Ark. The organization's final grandmaster, Jacques de Molay, was executed by burning in 1314. As fire engulfed his frame, he supposedly condemned King Philip and Pope Clement V. Both individuals perished within months, supporting accounts regarding Templar otherworldly authority. The Templars' termination dispersed their participants throughout Europe. Certain individuals joined different religious organizations. Different members vanished entirely. Several might have transported Templar mysteries to remote territories where royal oppression couldn't locate them. Subsequent accounts claim the remaining Templars transported their most significant treasures to Scotland, Portugal, or even the New World. These narratives propose the Ark journeyed with escaping warriors who pursued secure locations past the grasp of antagonistic monarchs and religious leaders. The Templars motivated innumerable stories and conspiracy ideas. Authors envision them as protectors of early wisdom and controllers of unbelievable items. The Ark appears notably in numerous of these accounts, constantly concealed, yet never permanently missing. Medieval charts occasionally identified spots where holy treasures supposedly rested buried. Templar holdings frequently showed up on these maps, proposing links between the warriors and concealed sacred objects. Yet most identified spots produced nothing when subsequently investigated. The organization's swift ascent and enigmatic prosperity continued to baffle historians. Their excavations underneath the Temple Mount might clarify both occurrences. If they uncovered early treasures, potentially including the Ark, they could have utilized this discovery to construct their domain. Contemporary archaeology has disclosed minimal regarding Templar operations on the Temple Mount. The location stays politically delicate, and excavation is severely restricted. The passages the warriors investigated have been closed or eliminated across the ages. Certain investigators indicate architectural proof in Templar religious structures throughout Europe. They assert particular design components reflect knowledge obtained from examining early Hebrew items. The measurements and decorations could encode mysteries uncovered in Jerusalem. The enigma intensifies when considering the Templars' abrupt desertion of the Holy Land. When their situation became impossible to maintain, they made no visible attempt to rescue their supposed treasures. Either the treasures never existed or they had previously been relocated to security. The Ark's connection with the Knights Templar symbolizes medieval Christianity's complicated association with its Hebrew origins. Christians honored Hebrew writings, yet frequently oppressed living Hebrew people. They pursued items from Solomon's temple while demolishing current synagogues. The account endures because it merges components that seize human thought. Secret organizations, missing treasures, spiritual enigma, and heavenly authority create a compelling narrative. Whether accurate or not, the account continues to motivate fresh generations of pursuers. The Templars disappeared, yet their accounts persist. In each concealed cavern and closed chamber, treasure seekers hope to locate proof of their secret findings. The Covenant's Ark stays the supreme reward in this perpetual game of historical pursuit and discovery. Nazis and the mystical. In the distorted passages of Nazi thinking, early symbols possessed authority that contemporary armaments couldn't equal. Hitler and his adherents maintained that mysterious items could shift the equilibrium between triumph and loss. Among every relic they pursued, the Covenant's Ark symbolized the supreme reward. The Nazi fascination with the mystical started well before they obtained authority in Germany. Hidden groups and mystical organizations prospered in the disorder after World War I. Young individuals like Heinrich Himmler consumed writings regarding early mysteries and missing societies. These initial Nazis persuaded themselves that they were meant to reveal mysteries that earlier generations had misplaced or disregarded. They envisioned themselves as contemporary warriors on a mission for items that would provide them otherworldly authority. The Ark became focal to their visions. Himmler, who would subsequently command the SS, was especially captivated by archaeological missions. He maintained that appropriate investigation could pinpoint items referenced in early writings. He also believed that controlling such objects would prove Nazi Germany's heavenly entitlement to govern the planet. The Ahnenerbe, or Ancestral Heritage Society, was founded in 1935 to advance these concerns with scholarly precision. This group merged genuine research with strange racial ideas. Its participants hunted for proof of Aryan dominance in the remnants of former societies. Among their most ambitious undertakings concentrated on the Holy Land. Nazi investigators examined early writings that could disclose the spot of concealed treasures. They devoted particular focus to Hebrew sources, maintaining that previous temple clergy had documented hints regarding holy items. The mission to Ethiopia in 1938 symbolized their most earnest effort to locate the Ark. Directed by Ernst Schaefer, the group officially examined Tibetan society and geography. Yet confidential instructions guided them to examine Ethiopian assertions regarding controlling the Covenant's Ark. The mission participants were deliberately selected for their knowledge and their dedication to Nazi thinking. They incorporated anthropologists, language experts, and image recorders who could record their findings. They also brought armaments and transmission apparatus for more sinister intentions. Schaefer's group dedicated months in the Ethiopian mountainous regions, supposedly examining local traditions and animals. Yet, they also established contact with Ethiopian Orthodox clergy and toured early religious structures. They examined the assertions surrounding the Church of Our Lady, Mary of Zion in Axum. The outcomes of this examination stay restricted in German records. Certain records were eliminated throughout the war's concluding disorder. Different ones were captured by Allied powers and have never been completely disclosed. What the Nazis found in Ethiopia stays predominantly unknown. Current reports propose they located no proof of the genuine Ark. Ethiopian clergy declined to assist the foreign examiners. Local officials grew doubtful of their operations. The mission returned to Germany with scholarly specimens, yet no holy items. Still, certain Nazi records suggested more fruitful quests in different spots. Himmler approved missions to caverns in Palestine and archaeological locations in Iraq. These undertakings functioned under severe secrecy and created minimal traces in formal documentation. The Nazi concern in the Ark was not exclusively scholarly. They maintained that controlling it would provide them invulnerability in combat. Early writings characterized the Ark's capacity to eliminate adversaries and safeguard its carriers. Hitler's commanders believed such authority could guarantee triumph against crushing disadvantages. This conviction shaped Nazi approach throughout the war's subsequent phases. When traditional fighting started to fail, they intensified their focus on otherworldly remedies. Confidential investigation undertakings devoured resources that could have been utilized for realistic military intentions. The Ark also suited Nazi racial ideas regarding Hebrew inferiority. They contended that Hebrew people had been undeserving protectors of such a mighty item. Based on their distorted reasoning, Aryan Germans merited to control items that inferior groups had misplaced or abused. This reasoning defended their oppression of Hebrew researchers and elimination of Hebrew collections. They maintained that removing Hebrew people would remove rivalry for early mysteries. They also anticipated that terrorizing Hebrew settlements could compel survivors to disclose concealed understanding. Allied intelligence operations ultimately discovered Nazi archaeological missions. British and American operatives started their personal quests for items that could concern the adversary. The conflict expanded past combat zones into collections and early remnants. Certain of this rivalry concentrated on the Dead Sea region, where both parties anticipated locating hints regarding temple treasures. Nazi and Allied groups occasionally labored in the identical areas, though they seldom met each other straightforwardly. The terrain transformed into a combat zone for early mysteries. The most striking Nazi quest happened in the war's concluding months. As Allied forces advanced on Germany, SS divisions were supposedly sent on frantic tasks to pinpoint otherworldly armaments. Certain of these missions traveled toward the Middle East with ambiguous aims. These concluding quests achieved nothing apart from squandering resources that Germany desperately required for traditional protection. The Nazis never located the Ark or any different item that could overturn their military circumstances. Their fascination with the mystical added to their final loss. The link between Nazis and the Ark was preserved in widespread society by the 1981 movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. Although the film adopted substantial freedoms with historical details, it seized the fundamental reality regarding Nazi concern in early items. The film's depiction of Nazi missions hunting for the Ark connected with viewers who grasped the regime's genuine fascination with mystical objects. Hollywood invention mirrored historical actuality, even when particular elements were modified for theatrical impact. Contemporary investigators continue to examine Nazi archaeological operations. Recently disclosed records occasionally uncover details regarding wartime missions, yet most Nazi quests for the Ark stay covered in enigma and conjecture. The inheritance of Nazi concern in the Ark complicates contemporary quests for the item. Any mission that tracks routes earlier investigated by Nazi groups risks connection with their thinking. This association renders earnest archaeological activity more challenging and politically delicate. The Nazi section in the Ark's narrative proves how early objects can become entangled with current politics. Holy items that previously unified individuals in devotion can subsequently separate them through rival assertions and opposing understandings. The Nazis never located the Ark, yet their quest disclosed the persisting authority of this early representation. In their control, the Ark would have transformed into an instrument of domination instead of an indication of heavenly presence. Maybe its persistent concealment shielded it from such unholy utilization. Contemporary pursuits and deceptions. The 20th century changed the quest for the Covenant's Ark from scholarly endeavor into media performance. Treasure seekers, equipped with metal sensors and recording cameras, started searching the planet for hints that earlier generations had overlooked. Certain individuals pursued recognition, different ones wealth, yet all were persuaded they could resolve history's most significant enigma. The contemporary period of Ark seeking started in the 1960s, when enhanced travel rendered distant spots more reachable. Explorers could access Ethiopian mountainous terrain, investigate Jordanian caverns, and examine Dead Sea remnants with reasonable ease. The planet abruptly appeared reduced, and its mysteries more reachable. Ron Wyatt, a medical anesthetist from Tennessee, transformed into among the most disputed Ark seekers of the late 20th century. He asserted to have found Noah's Ark, the Red Sea Passage location, and ultimately the Covenant's Ark itself. His discoveries were rejected by established archaeologists, yet drew committed adherents. Wyatt's most extraordinary assertion involved a cavern underneath Jerusalem's Calvary. He indicated he had crawled via tight passages and located the Ark positioned precisely where Jeremiah had concealed it 26 ages previously. Based on his version, the finding happened in 1982 throughout unauthorized excavations. The narrative incorporated striking elements that appeared borrowed from adventure films. Wyatt characterized otherworldly occurrences that stopped him from photographing the Ark. He asserted that scientific examination of blood located on the location demonstrated it originated from Jesus Christ. His account merged archaeology with spiritual disclosure. Expert archaeologists were doubtful from the start. Wyatt supplied no confirmable proof for his findings. His images were ambiguous or evidently fabricated. His scholarly assertions couldn't be duplicated by separate investigators. Still, his advocates stayed persuaded of his truthfulness. The Israeli officials rejected providing Wyatt authorization to excavate underneath Jerusalem. They indicated that such activity would demand extensive authorizations and worldwide supervision. Unauthorized excavation in such a delicate spot would result in prompt detention and legal action. Regardless of these contradictions, Wyatt's narrative circulated swiftly via religious settlements. Publications, recordings, and online platforms advanced his findings to viewers eager for confirmation that scriptural narratives were precisely accurate. The absence of scholarly confirmation appeared to strengthen instead of reduce their attraction. Different contemporary searchers concentrated on Ethiopia's assertions regarding controlling the Ark. Television programs brought worldwide focus to the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum. Media workers and filmmakers pursued conversations with the protector monk who supposedly observed the sacred object. These examinations disclosed the deliberate secrecy surrounding Ethiopian assertions. The protector monk declined to communicate openly regarding his responsibilities. Religious administrators supplied general declarations regarding their custom, yet provided no particular proof. The enigma intensified instead of resolved. Certain investigators tried scholarly methods to Ethiopian assertions. They utilized ground-examining technology to inspect the religious structure grounds. They examined structural characteristics that could disclose concealed chambers. They investigated historical records for hints regarding the Ark's coming in Africa. The outcomes were uncertain. The equipment identified subterranean irregularities that might be early items or contemporary infrastructure. The records held accounts and customs, yet no confirmable historical details. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church persisted to protect its mysteries. Meanwhile, treasure seekers investigated different prospects. Groups examined caverns across the Middle East, searching for chambers that could hold temple items. They tracked early commercial paths that escaping clergy could have utilized. They scrutinized each hint referenced in historical materials. The Dead Sea territory drew specific focus. The finding of early manuscripts in adjacent caverns proposed that different items could stay concealed in the region. Metal sensor supporters scanned slopes and valley surfaces, anticipating to pinpoint buried treasures. Multiple missions asserted remarkable findings that subsequently demonstrated incorrect. In 1981, a group declared they had located precious metal objects corresponding biblical characterizations. Scientific examination disclosed contemporary brass with artificial maturation. The deception embarrassed earnest investigators and harmed public confidence in archaeological assertions. The Internet period brought fresh complications to Ark seeking. Online platforms emerged, asserting insider understanding regarding confidential government concealment operations. Conspiracy theorists proposed that mighty groups had previously located the Ark, yet were concealing it from the population. These accounts combined reality with invention in methods that became impossible to separate. Certain contemporary searchers concentrated on written proof instead of tangible excavation. They investigated early writings with digital examination, searching for configurations that earlier researchers had overlooked. They developed databases of each reference to the Ark in historical materials, hunting for disregarded hints. Digital charting equipment provided fresh prospects for examination. Satellite photographs could disclose archaeological locations that ground-based investigations had overlooked. Digital modeling could rebuild early Jerusalem and recognize potential concealment locations. The instruments were advanced, yet the outcome stayed unsatisfying. Expert archaeologists became irritated with non-professional treasure seekers who harmed historical locations in their zeal. Unauthorized excavation eliminated precious circumstances that could never be restored. The quest for the Ark was producing more damage than benefit to genuine scholarly investigation. Government officials in Israel, Jordan, and Ethiopia imposed more severe restrictions on archaeological activity. Authorizations became harder to secure, External investigators encountered heightened examination. The political sensitivity of Ark-connected assertions rendered formal collaboration more challenging. Still, the quests persisted. Each generation of seekers maintained they controlled benefits that their forerunners had been without. Superior equipment, enhanced comprehension, or heavenly direction would ultimately triumph where different ones had been unsuccessful. The configuration repeated perpetually without resolution. Television broadcasts exploited public captivation with arc seeking. Program sequences guaranteed conclusive responses, yet produced only conjecture and theatrical reconstruction. The medium preferred extraordinary assertions over deliberate examination. Amusement worth exceeded historical precision. Certain broadcasts showcased alleged authorities who rendered remarkable declarations without supplying proof. They characterized early conspiracies and contemporary concealment with identical assurance. Observers struggled to separate between genuine research and imaginative narrative. The emergence of social platforms intensified both authentic investigation and extreme deceptions. Non-professional examiners could distribute their ideas with worldwide viewers immediately. Popular recordings asserted to display arc portions or confidential excavations. Authenticity verification became nearly impossible in the deluge of details. Image and recording modification programs rendered deceptions more persuasive than previously before. Pictures could be altered to display items that never existed. Incorrect records could be developed with expert grade. The boundary between proof and invention obscured past acknowledgement. Regardless of these difficulties, certain contemporary investigators advanced earnest scholarly examination. They utilized strict methodology to early materials. They partnered with founded organizations. They released their discoveries in peer-evaluated publications where different authorities could assess their activity. These genuine investigators rendered authentic additions to comprehending the Ark's historical circumstances. They explained dating of scriptural writings. They charted early commercial paths. They examined archaeological proof from temple-era locations. Their activity progressed, understanding even when it didn't pinpoint the Ark itself. The scholarly method disclosed how minimal tangible proof exists for the Ark's destiny. Early materials are limited and frequently opposing. Archaeological remnants from the accurate period are incomplete. The historical documentation holds tremendous voids that might never be occupied. This ambiguity developed space for both truthful research and imaginative conjecture. Earnest investigators recognized the restrictions of accessible proof. Widespread authors occupied the voids with creative ideas. Both methods fulfill separate viewers with separate requirements. The contemporary pursuit for the Ark mirrors current society's association with early enigmas. We control unprecedented technological abilities, yet confront the identical fundamental obstacles that have constantly faced searchers. Tangible proof stays elusive regardless of our advanced instruments. Maybe the quest itself has transformed more significant than the discovery. The mission for the Ark involves human inquisitiveness and spiritual yearning in methods that pure historical investigation cannot equal. The enigma fulfills intentions that remedies could truly weaken. Contemporary Ark seekers symbolize a wider human inclination to pursue tangible confirmation for intangible convictions. In a period of scholarly materialism, individuals desire tangible items that confirm spiritual realities. The Ark represents a connection between paradise and earth that numerous frantically desire to traverse. The deceptions and incorrect assertions that trouble contemporary quests mirror this profound appetite for certainty. When authentic proof is absent, individuals develop their personal. When actuality frustrates, invention occupies the emptiness. The boundary between conviction and confirmation becomes perilously obscured. Still, genuine investigation persists alongside the sensationalism. Researchers utilize fresh techniques to previous inquiries. Equipment discloses earlier concealed features of early locations. The dialogue between former and current persists via deliberate examination instead of uncontrolled conjecture. The contemporary section in the Ark narrative is still being composed. Each year delivers fresh assertions and recent examinations. Certain will demonstrate worthless, yet different ones could add to ultimate comprehension. The quest persists because the inquiries stay unanswered, and maybe that is fitting. The Covenant's Ark arose from a period when heavenly enigma was embraced as ordinary. Its vanishing safeguards, that awareness of astonishment in a period that frequently diminishes everything to information and examination. Holy representation. Past precious metals and timber, past early workmanship and historical enigma, the Covenant's Ark transports significance that exceeds its tangible shape. Throughout ages and societies, it has transformed into a representation that communicates to the most profound human yearnings for attachment with the heavenly. In Hebrew custom, the Ark symbolizes the manifestation of God residing alongside his selected followers. It functioned as the throne where the invisible Creator would encounter mortal delegates. The chamber between its precious cherubim identified the limit between paradise and earth. The location where boundless purity contacted limited humanity. This representation goes more profound than simple depiction. The Ark personified the covenant itself, the holy arrangement between God and Israel. Its contents prompted the followers of their commitments and God's reliability. The stone tablets contained were not simply early law manuscripts, yet living testimonies to an eternal association. The Hebrew scripture characterizes the Ark, utilizing language adapted from earthly throne chambers. Monarchs occupied chairs of authority while performing formal activities. God's throne, symbolized by the Ark, fulfilled comparable intentions in the spiritual domain. Yet this throne traveled with the followers instead of staying secured in a palace. This portability granted the Ark distinctive representative authority. Unlike pagan statues that were bound to particular temples or spots, Israel's God could journey wherever his followers traveled. The Ark proved heavenly manifestation that was both close and mysteriously beyond grasp. Christian understanding added fresh dimensions of significance to Ark representation. Initial church leaders perceived links between the Ark's function in the Old Testament and Christ's activity in the New Testament. Both functioned as encounter locations between God and humanity. Both connected the separation that wrongdoing had developed. The medieval church created detailed theological clarifications for Ark representation. Its precious metal symbolized heavenly character. Its timber represented human character. The cherubim displayed angelic veneration. Each element was understood as indicating toward Christ and the church's holy practices. Certain Christian customs perceived Mary, the mother of Jesus, as a fresh Ark of the Covenant. She transported God inside her body, exactly as the early Ark had transported God's manifestation in the temple. This understanding granted the missing sacred object persisting significance even following its tangible vanishing. Islamic materials also acknowledge the Ark's representative significance. The Quran references it as an indication granted to the children of Israel. Islamic custom characterizes it as holding sacred objects from Moses and Aaron. Its disappearance identified a critical moment in Israel's spiritual history. The representation extends past religious limits into wider human encounter. The Ark symbolizes humanity's mission for the holy in a material realm. It personifies the anticipation that heavenly authority can be held in tangible items while staying mysteriously beyond grasp. Contemporary psychology acknowledges archetypal configurations in Ark representation. The holder carrying holy items shows up in numerous societies and beliefs. These containers symbolize the human mind's capacity to contain significant realities. They represent the pursuit for significance that propels spiritual investigation. The ark's vanishing contributes another dimension of representative significance. Missing items frequently transform more mighty than located ones. The missing ark symbolizes all the holy possessions that humans have misplaced via carelessness, aggression, or the basic movement of time. This non-attendance develops space for yearning and creativity. The absent ark transforms into whatever individuals require it to represent. It can symbolize flawless fairness, boundless authority, or pure heavenly affection. Its concealment safeguards it from the frustration that actuality frequently delivers. Political movements have embraced ark representation for their personal intentions. Nations pursuing legitimacy assert links to early Israel and its holy items. Revolutionary organizations utilize ark imagery to propose that God backs their purpose. The representation fulfills both traditional and extreme purposes. The ark also represents the pressure between reachability and beyond grasp that defines all spiritual encounter. It was concurrently the most reachable and most perilous item in early Israel. Individuals required it, yet couldn't securely contact it. This contradiction persists to connect with faithful followers today. Creative depictions of the ark have transformed across ages to mirror shifting theological and cultural viewpoints. Medieval illuminations displayed it as a jeweled container. Renaissance artworks portrayed it with traditional measurements. Contemporary understandings frequently highlight its enigmatic or foreign characteristics. Each creative understanding discloses something regarding the civilization that developed it. The ark transforms into a reflection, mirroring human aspirations and concerns regarding encounters with heavenly authority. Artists utilize it to investigate inquiries regarding beyond grasp, enigma, and the appropriate association between holy and secular domains. The quest for the tangible ark can be grasped as a representative mission for certainty in an ambiguous realm. Individuals desire tangible confirmation that their convictions relate to objective actuality. The ark symbolizes the supreme item that could supply such confirmation. Yet the representative ark might be more precious than any tangible finding could ever represent. Representations function distinctly than items. They can transport numerous significance concurrently. They can adjust to fresh situations while safeguarding early realities. The ark's representative authority clarifies why it persists to captivate individuals who possess no straight link to Hebrew or Christian customs. It symbolizes universal human encounters. The pursuit for significance, the aspiration for heavenly safeguarding, the anticipation that holy and secular domains can somehow attach. Archaeological findings could someday disclose the ark's tangible destiny, yet its representative importance will persist regardless of what excavators locate or don't locate. The representation has adopted an existence separate from its initial material shape. Current spirituality frequently highlights inner encounter over external items. Still, the ark representation endures because it addresses requirements that entirely subjective belief cannot fulfill. Individuals desire their inner encounters confirmed by outer actualities. They pursue verification that their individual meetings with the holy attach to larger realities. The ark connects individual and communal spiritual encounter. It symbolizes individual meetings with God, while also representing the covenant that connects complete settlements. This dual purpose renders it significant to both private commitment and public veneration. In a period of spiritual diversity, the ark fulfills as a shared reference location for separate belief customs. Hebrew people, Christians, and Muslims all acknowledge its importance while understanding its significance distinctly. The representation develops space for both harmony and variety in spiritual comprehension. The persistent authority of ark representation proposes that humans require tangible supports for spiritual actualities. Pure conceptualization might fulfill thinkers, yet most individuals demand concrete representations to grasp beyond grasp realities. The Ark supplies such a representation that has demonstrated remarkably enduring throughout ages. Whether concealed in Ethiopian religious structures, interred in Middle Eastern caverns, or dissolved in Babylonian fires, the Ark persists to fulfill its representative purpose. It stays a throne for the invisible God, an encounter location between paradise and earth, a storage for the holy in the center of the ordinary realm. Reflections in widespread society. The precious box that previously existed in Solomon's temple has located fresh existence in the silver displays and digital realms of contemporary amusement. The Covenant's Ark leaped from early history into widespread society, transforming into maybe the most recognized religious item in current media. Hollywood found the Ark's theatrical capability in 1981 when Raiders of the Lost Ark roared into theaters globally. Director Steven Spielberg and producer George Lucas changed the early enigma into an energetic adventure that seized worldwide thought. Their understanding would establish how countless individuals envisioned the missing sacred object. The film's adaptation of the Ark controlled otherworldly authorities that could dissolve faces and overthrow forces. This depiction, extracted from scriptural versions, yet intensified them for theatrical impact. The film proposed that the Ark stayed as perilous in the 20th century as it had existed in early periods. Raiders of the Lost Ark rendered archaeology thrilling for established viewers. Indiana Jones transformed into the model for daring researchers who merged scholarly knowledge with tangible bravery. The production motivated innumerable young individuals to advance occupations in archaeology, though minimal located it as action-filled as the film proposed. The movie's triumph generated a complete franchise that persisted to showcase religious items and otherworldly enigmas. Each Indiana Jones production extracted from separate mythological customs, yet the Ark stayed the most unforgettable and powerful of these early objects. The Raiders' depiction of Nazi concern in the Ark was founded on historical reality, though the elements were theatricalized for amusement. Genuine Nazi missions truly hunted for religious items, maintaining they could supply otherworldly help in their war attempt. The production changed these historical footnotes into persuasive narrative. After Hollywood's direction, television creators started integrating the Ark into different sequences and programs. Broadcasts varying from adventure displays to historical examinations showcased the absent sacred object. Each understanding contributed fresh dimensions to its cultural mythology. The History Channel and Discovery Channel created countless programs investigating Ark ideas and missions. These broadcasts combined genuine research with conjectural reconstruction, frequently obscuring the boundary between instruction and amusement. Observers struggled to separate historical reality from theatrical understanding. Science invention embraced the Ark as a mechanism for investigating themes regarding early equipment and alien involvement. Certain narratives proposed that the Ark was truly extraterrestrial apparatus abandoned by visiting space-traveling societies. These understandings mirrored current captivation with UFO occurrences. Video games found abundant narrative prospects in Ark-connected adventures. Participants could hunt for the sacred object in virtual realms that merged historical investigation with action-filled gameplay. Games like Tomb Raider and Assassin's Creed integrated Ark components into their narratives. The Assassin's Creed franchise rendered extensive utilization of historical items, incorporating the Ark in its intricate mythology regarding confidential organizations and early equipment. Participants encountered fictionalized adaptations of historical occasions while hunting for mighty items that could shape human society. Role-participating games permitted participants to develop their personal arc, seeking adventures. Game directors crafted situations where characters could investigate early remnants, interpret mysterious hints, and confront otherworldly protectors safeguarding holy, sacred objects. The Ark transformed into a standard component in fantasy gaming. Literature embraced arc themes throughout numerous categories. Thriller stories showcased contemporary treasure seekers competing against time to locate the sacred object before it descended into malicious control. Historical invention investigated what could have occurred throughout the Ark's scriptural journeys. Spiritual invention utilized the Ark to investigate themes of conviction, uncertainty, and heavenly authority. Authors envisioned current characters meeting the sacred object and confronting with its consequences for contemporary conviction. These narratives frequently merged adventure with spiritual contemplation. Comic publications and graphic stories supplied visual understandings of Ark accounts. Artists could portray the otherworldly occurrences connected with the sacred object in methods that writing alone couldn't communicate. The medium demonstrated especially effective for displaying the Ark's rumored authorities. The Internet period delivered fresh shapes of Ark-connected substance. YouTube channels created program-style recordings, investigating different ideas regarding the sacred object spot. Certain creators asserted to possess insider details regarding confidential government concealment. Online discussion spaces permitted supporters to distribute investigation and argue separate ideas regarding the Ark's destiny. These settlements brought together non-professional historians, spiritual faithful, and inquisitive doubters who located shared ground in their captivation with the early enigma. Social platforms enabled swift distribution of Ark-connected substance. Popular recordings asserted to display archaeological findings or leaked government records. The velocity of detail distribution rendered it challenging to confirm assertions before they contacted enormous viewers. Streaming platforms started creating initial substance concentrated on spiritual enigmas, incorporating Ark-connected examinations. These broadcasts could investigate topics in greater depth than customary television permitted, attracting niche viewers concerned in particular ideas or spots. The attractiveness of Ark-themed amusement mirrored wider cultural concerns in spiritual history, archaeological finding, and otherworldly occurrences. Viewers desired narratives that merged historical genuineness with fantastic components. The Ark supplied an ideal container for such narratives. Educational organizations started utilizing widespread society references to involve students in historical investigation. Instructors located that students who had witnessed raiders of the Lost Ark were more concerned in discovering regarding genuine scriptural archaeology. Amusement transformed into a passage to earnest research. Museums profited on widespread concern by developing exhibits regarding scriptural archaeology and the quest for religious items. These presentations frequently referenced widespread society while supplying factual details regarding historical proof. The amusement industry's sway on public instruction became progressively visible. Critics contended that widespread society distorted public comprehension of archaeological discipline and spiritual history. They concerned that amusement worth were overwhelming instructional objectives. The boundary between reality and invention transformed problematic when viewers couldn't separate between them. Advocates responded that widespread society produced concern in subjects that could otherwise be disregarded. They contended that amusement could motivate earnest investigation even when particular elements were imprecise. The objective was involvement instead of exactness. The Ark's journey via widespread society proves how early representations can be persistently re-understood for current viewers. Each generation finds fresh significance in previous narratives. The sacred object stays significant because it addresses persistent human worries regarding authority, conviction, and enigma. Contemporary amusement has rendered the Ark more recognized than it ever existed in early periods. More individuals have discovered of it via films and television than via spiritual instruction or historical investigation. Widespread society has transformed into the fundamental container for communicating understanding regarding this early item. This cultural communication unavoidably involves change. The arc of widespread thought varies considerably from the arc characterized in early writings. Contemporary understandings highlight action and performance, while early materials concentrated on practice and respect. Still, both adaptations fulfill comparable purposes in their individual circumstances. The early arc supplied a focal location for spiritual commitment and national distinctiveness. The contemporary arc provides thrill and astonishment in a progressively secular realm. Both adaptations assist individuals attach with something larger than themselves. The arc's manifestation in widespread society guarantees that it will persist to captivate coming generations, regardless of whether the tangible item is ever located. Its representative authority has been intensified and safeguarded via amusement platforms. The quest might persist forever, yet the narrative will certainly persist. The throne remains absent. The particles settle gradually in Jerusalem's early pathways. Archaeologists organize their instruments and shut their excavation locations. Treasure seekers return, dwelling with vacant hands and intricate ideas. The Covenant's arc stays as hard to grasp as morning vapor, as enigmatic as it existed the moment it disappeared from history's records. 3,000 years have elapsed since Moses initially observed the heavenly blueprint on Mount Sinai. Empires have ascended and descended. Equipment has progressed past early conception. Still, the precious box that previously connected paradise and earth persists to conceal from human finding. The quest has devoured innumerable existences and wealth. Monarchs sent forces to locate it. Clergy committed their being to protecting mysteries regarding its spot. Researchers devoted occupations advancing leads that directed nowhere. The absent throne of God has demonstrated more hard to grasp than any earthly treasure. Each generation maintains it controls benefits that earlier searchers were without. Superior charts, enhanced equipment, more profound comprehension of early languages. Still, each generation joins the extended line of frustrated pursuers who located everything apart from what they were pursuing. The ark might sit in Ethiopian mountainous terrain, protected by monks who never communicate its identity. It could rest, interred underneath Jerusalem's holy stones, anticipating political circumstances to shift before disclosing itself. It might have dissolved in Babylonian fires, abandoning only memories and accounts. Maybe the spot holds less significance than the quest itself. The mission for the ark has motivated magnificent fascinations and sad failures. It has propelled investigators to the planet's conclusions and researchers to the depths of early writings. It has attached the contemporary realm to its most remote former. The absent ark has transformed into a reflection mirroring human character's intricacy. We are beings who require both enigma and finding, both inquiries and responses. The ark supplies inquiries that might be more precious than any responses we could locate. Its non-attendance communicates to the fundamental human situation. We control amazing abilities, yet stay restricted by mortality and ambiguity. We can divide atoms and investigate space, yet we cannot pinpoint a precious box that disappeared from the historical documentation. This restriction humbles our technological arrogance. For all our satellites and sensors, ground-examining technology and digital databases, certain possessions stay past our grasp. The early realm retains its mysteries regardless of our contemporary instruments. The ark's concealment also safeguards its authority. Located items transform into museum objects, recorded and clarified, diminished to their component materials and historical circumstances. Missing items transform into accounts that develop more mighty with each relating. Spiritual faithful locate comfort in the ark's persistent non-attendance. They contend that something so pure shouldn't be subjected to scholarly examination or tourist image recording. Its concealment shields it from unholy handling and commercial utilization. Doubters propose that the ark never existed whatsoever, that it was constantly more representation than material. They indicate the absence of tangible proof and the wealth of opposing accounts. Maybe the quest persists because there was never anything to locate, yet representations can be more genuine than tangible items. The Ark symbolizes humanity's yearning for heavenly manifestation in a material realm. It personifies anticipation that holy and secular domains can somehow attach. These requirements exist whether or not the precious box ever truly existed. The narrative persists because fresh generations find previous inquiries. Young individuals examine early writings and question what occurred to the items characterized there. They witness films regarding treasure seekers and envision themselves rendering great findings. Equipment will certainly enhance. Archaeological techniques will transform more advanced. Fresh records might surface holding earlier unknown details. The quest will persist with superior instruments and recent viewpoints. Political circumstances might shift in methods that open earlier, inaccessible spots. Governments that currently limit archaeological activity could someday accept worldwide missions. Concealed records could be accessed, hidden chambers could be investigated. Yet the Ark might stay concealed, not because it cannot be located, yet because it shouldn't be located. Certain enigmas fulfill significant intentions that remedies would eliminate. Certain inquiries are more precious than responses. The absent throne prompts us that human understanding possesses restrictions. We cannot resolve each puzzle or pinpoint each missing item. Certain possessions slide past our grasp and stay there regardless of our finest attempts. This ambiguity maintains us humble. It prompts us that we are not controllers of all understanding. It proposes that enigma could be a characteristic of being instead of a difficulty to be resolved. The Ark's narrative will persist, being related regardless of whether the item itself is ever found. Fresh publications will be composed, recent films will be rendered. Separate ideas will be advanced. The dialogue between former and current will continue. Maybe that is the intention. Maybe the Ark was constantly intended to be a catalyst for human creativity instead of a museum object behind glass barriers. Maybe its most significant authority rests in motivating individuals to maintain hunting, maintain questioning, maintain contemplating. The throne stays absent, yet the realm it symbolizes persists. Individuals still assemble in houses of veneration, pursuing heavenly manifestation. They still examine early writings anticipating wisdom. They still maintain that paradise and earth can somehow encounter. The tangible Ark might be disappeared, yet its spiritual actuality endures. In each act of conviction, each moment of supplication, each gesture of veneration, something resembling the Ark emerges. The precious box was constantly indicating toward an actuality past itself. And therefore the quest persists, not simply for a missing item, yet for the significance it symbolizes. We pursue the Ark because we pursue God. We hunt the throne because we require a monarch. We chase the absent because we anticipate to locate what we ourselves have misplaced. The Covenant's Ark stays concealed somewhere between history and account, between what existed and what could represent. Its non-attendance shapes our current as mightily as its manifestation previously shaped the early realm. The absent throne persists to govern from the shadows, commanding human creativity and motivating eternal missions. In the conclusion, maybe that is triumph sufficient. Maybe being pursued is superior than being located. Maybe the Ark accomplishes its most significant triumph by staying perpetually exactly past our grasp, summoning us forward into enigma, adventure, and astonishment. The throne remains absent. The quest persists. The narrative never concludes.